Here to frustrate you more than Sid not getting an All-Star in '94, it's the Brave and Faithful podcast with Will O'Callaghan and Joe Troy.
So welcome to episode 2 of the Brave and Faithful podcast. A phenomenal first week. We thank you all for listening. Today, of course, we are here in Bournemouth O'Connor Park, where we will preview next weekend's Offaly senior football final between Rhode and Tullamore. We'll be having reaction from both the Tullamore and Rhode camps, as well as looking back on a bumper weekend of hurling action where Kilcormac have joined St Rynagh in this year's county final. Also, Drumcullen and Kinnity return to the top table of Offaly senior hurling. We'll also speak to St Rynagh's captain Grainne Dolan after St Rynagh have done 4 ladies county finals in a row, and also look forward to another Leinster campaign. So we'll introduce, as always, we're going to be previewing what is another historic clash. Rhode and Tullamore, they split the titles, the top two. Rhode, of course, bearing down on title number 30 against a Tullamore team hot in their coattails to try and claw back the deficit to 1.
Well, that's it, Joe. We're here in Bournemouth O'Connor Park. It's a pretty busy period. We're in the middle of county finals. That's why our podcast is as focused around them currently. And yeah, just to echo what you said at the top, great that people were listening, subscribing, joining us on social media over the last while. The feedback's been great. Kind of gives us the energy to come back here this week to look forward to the football final and take a look back at the hurling. The football's intriguing because Rhode, who many of us have written off or said they're coming towards the end of this cycle, continue to defy all expectations. This is 9 county finals in a row. I remember being here in 2013 when Tullamore overcame Rhode the last time that they met in a final. Since then, Rhode have gone back to dominate again. And even last year, when it seemed like maybe there was a passing of the torch when Forban won the title, Rhode are still back here for the 9th consecutive season. So you look at Alan McNulty and the impact that he had coming off the bench in their semi-final victory after extra time against Edenderry. It just goes to show the experience that's across that team. And even when you look at some of the young guns like Aaron Keelan this year, St Joseph's Rochester Bridge captain, as they made a bit of history themselves by winning a first Leinster school for that Westmeath school, they can just seem to bring in 1 or 2 players every now and then, and that's enough to regenerate. I was speaking to Malachy McNulty. They went for outside management when Jack Cooney and Pascal Keelan finished last season. They're now both managing Westmeath. They've gone for Malachy, who was part of basically all of Portlaois's success over the last 20 years or so as a player firstly, and then pretty much directly from his playing career he became their manager and was richly successful with them in recent seasons in Laois. So they've kept that kind of winning mentality going, and Tullamore have got this youthful side who are coming through, in many ways brought on by Niall Stack at Colosh de Cullum in Tullamore, so he knows exactly what to do to get the most out of these players, notwithstanding some of the experience. And we'll hear from Paul McConway, who's been with them through Féiles, through all their underage success with Tullamore, has won titles, has captained Offaly. We heard from Johnny Maloney on the podcast last week, who's a crucial player for both club and county at this stage, albeit in different roles. There's no reason that Tullamore can't believe that they can beat Rhode this coming Sunday. No,
and I did do the interviews both for Offaly TV and also Midlands 103 across in O'Brien Park with Niall Stack. And of course, Niall Stack has played against these Rhode guys. He's won county championships with Tullamore, back from his first final in '98 right through to that period where Tullamore were really, really progressive. He's looking at the youngsters that have come in. He's handled them in school. He has them with the club. He maybe, once I finished some of the elder Tullamore statesman's career, but he certainly postponed him. But he's had to come back for that experience of Paul McConway, who's had a pretty horrific 14 months with injury, and Shane Dooley. When they really needed him to step up, he delivered in the later part of the group stages to fire home that goal to put them on their way against Clara. So it is a huge final. We talk about Alan McNamee, just nearly a telepathic move to set up that goal, because Rhode were on the ropes. Edenderry were coming with a wet sail. They really, really put it up to that Rhode side for long parts. They looked like they might knock them out of the championship, and of course we all know the drama that unfolded between Forban and Tullamore. So I think I asked the Tullamore camp, you spoke to the Rhode, was history much of a weight on it? It doesn't seem to be. The youngsters, particularly in Tullamore, are playing with a lot of freedom. That experience would have standed to them. Have they came back to the county final day quicker than expected? I think the general summary of it would be yes, but I don't think they've been used to winning underage titles coming up. They're going to be around for a long time, and I just think 7 years for Tullamore to be out of a final. They have a very, very expectant crowd, rightly or wrongly. Form out the window. I think when Tullamore get to a final, they expect to deliver. But look, Rhode are a wounded animal. We know what went on last year. We know Niall McNamee missed that final. They are very, very live dangered. They would have been the team that Forban would have said, look, if we can get through, we'll play Rhode in the final, try and cement our place, make that 2 in a row. Of course, they fell out of that game against Tullamore on penalties, but it's hard to look beyond Rhode. Despite the energy Tullamore will bring, despite the youth that they'll bring, Rhode know how to manage these situations, and I think this one will be very sweet if they can get over, because Alan McNamee has came back. He's reduced impact from the line, but you look at the two Darbys, Niall and McNamee, they're certainly in the twilight stages of their career, but as John Motton said, they still have loads to offer at county level, so who's not to say they can go on for another 5, 6, 7 years with the club.
Yeah, and look, it's the potential for Rhode to make their own piece of history and to write the history books by getting to 30 before Tullamore, because I remember the arguments back in 2013 was almost like, who's going to get to 27 first or 28 first, or where are they going to go from here, and then Tullamore got the victory. And the conversation in 2013 was not too dissimilar to this year. People thought that Rhode were going into that final, all expectation was on them to get victory, and then Tullamore put in the performance to get their win. I find Niall Stack intriguing because Niall has been involved in motivation with many different teams and even individuals. People are probably aware that he's worked with Killian Sheridan, who is, I guess, a former Republic of Ireland striker, given the way his career has gone. But when he went to Poland, Niall Stack was working with him in terms of just motivation and getting him back confident in front of goal again. And Killian Sheridan has etched himself a very nice career across various countries since. So that I wouldn't underestimate that kind of motivational factor that he's going to have there. We know about Tullamore's talent that's coming through. I would kind of wonder if maybe it might be a big task for a lot of them to go out and play a first county final. I know the argument against that, and you were talking to the Tullamore camp, is these guys have been to Leinster school finals, they've been to All-Ireland finals. It doesn't really make that much of a difference county final day versus that when you've already played on big occasions.
Well, look, I've had a good chat with Niall Stack both on air and off air, and Niall has a stellar club playing career here with Tullamore behind him, but probably the hardest group to manage in any club are youngsters coming through from adolescent years into their early, adult years. And if you can get them playing for a manager, which they've done for Niall Stack through schools and now through the club, that's a huge fill up on your side, because if you have that group motivated, coming behind, disciplined, and they play for the manager, that's huge. And I think Niall Stack exudes confidence, but he talks so well of his players. He's open, he's honest. You'd find him, he's a guy that you could easily believe in. There's a huge experience, of course, in the Rhode camp. They nearly are robotic in the sense of how they play and how they develop and how they train. Some years Rhode could go without a manager, and the players on the job in their field. Tullamore will have to learn that ropes. I just think, I even asked Paul McConway about playing out here with a reduced crowd, maybe 100, 200, 300, whatever the case may be next Sunday. Paul said he didn't even know before the penalties and extra time, he didn't know there was no crowd here at all. We'll hear that in the interview later on. It's intriguing. I think that takes the pressure off Tullamore. If you have 9,000-10,000 people here with Tullamore in a county final on a normal day, huge weight of expectation and pressure. I think they'll have a chance to play with freedom, play with abandon outside in the field. But I just said, while Tullamore are live danger, I think this Rhode team have serious focus on reclaiming that Dowling Cup and re-establishing themselves. And look, there's been, what a village, what a parish, because every time I go to Rhode to the preview night, I know you went this year, you speak about, when targets are hit, Niall McNamee getting to the likes of 10 championships, Alan McNamee going on 11, 12. They don't look at that. When they look back on what this group has achieved the last 15 to 20 years, it's been quite phenomenal. Yeah,
I'd agree entirely. And there was a slightly sombre tone, admittedly, in Rhode last weekend, because we were only really kind of 6 or 7 days on from Pat Smullen being laid to rest in the village the week before. So it's one of those things. I think that's probably going to be a little bit of a motivating factor for them too, that I'm sure they would love to dedicate their success to Pat Smullen if they were to win the title this coming Sunday. And it's funny, the weight of expectation doesn't seem to worry either of these two clubs. You're probably growing up in a club where it's already steeped in success and where there's an expectation that you're going to do well. And I know you were talking to Niall Stack, and one of the questions that comes up is this maybe a year ahead of schedule, or were you expecting to get to a county final? And I'm going to paraphrase what he says slightly here, which is like, every year we expect to get to a county final. That's the kind of bar that these two clubs set. And I just hope in terms of the game that we get something befitting the two semi-finals, because with so much drama, and sometimes it doesn't happen on county final day. Well done to Declan Kelly, an Offalyman who got St Lomans to victory in Westmeath, their 5th title in 8 years yesterday when they beat Tyrrell's Pass. But that Westmeath final was a complete slugfest, and both teams struggled to get away from each other. It went to extra time, and in the end it was kind of freeze and who held their nerve that made a decision in a very low scoring game. I'm hoping after some of the free flowing and exciting football we saw in the two semi-finals a couple of weekends ago that we get a final similar to that, because both these teams can play really good football.
Yeah, and look, before we do leave the football action, when I spoke to Niall Stack, what he said was his whole thing coming in was that Tullamore look at their underage structure, even if they win on Sunday and they even go on and win next year, that they bring on the youth, because he thought that Tullamore were victims of their own success in terms of, and he might have referenced, Bore off air, that sometimes when you're successful for long periods of time, you think it's just going to automatically happen, and we'll come to Bore in a minute. But, he would have said that Rhode, Edenderry, Ferban, he mentioned a few other clubs, and along with Tullamore, the excitement that's coming through. And in bold prediction that he reckons the Offaly underage setup have as good a sprinkling of youngsters coming through as is in any county in Leinster, and he thinks that maybe Offaly have underachieved, but it's starting to come back the right way. He sees no reason why Offaly can't become a Super 8 competitor and cement their place there in the next couple of years, and he would have listen to him give you serious grounds for optimism. And look, we've seen them here. It's now a chance for them, maybe post-county final, to get back in under John Maughan and see what they can do in the inter-county stage.
Yeah, look, we'll switch to the hurling, because we had the two hurling semi-finals this weekend. One here on Sunday where St Rynagh beat Burr, a very familiar story in terms of how that game went. And on Saturday, KK got the better of Belmont. So a very familiar kind of look about this county final. But if you're in KK, you surely have the feeling that this is one they're going to win, because if history repeats itself, KK have beaten Rynagh in 3 recent finals. Yeah,
and look, I suppose you get loads of banter. First thing we'll have to clarify, because we're getting it all morning, are you going to come back on your 2 predictions that were wrong? Yes, I did tip Burr to win. I did say Belmont had a great chance. I don't actually think, bar maybe one preview might have said that Belmont would win, but I think Belmont were the more...
That was with us, by the way.
Yeah, but Belmont were probably the most disappointing of the 4 sides. They left it too late to come back into it. We'll go, I suppose, through match by match. The KK Belmont game in Burr, a lot of expectation on it. Kilcormac Malachy were coming through somewhat of a period of transition. They have the bulk of that team that have served them so well, and there was a major injury out over Cathal Kiley coming into it with a leg injury, but what a performance he gave in. And like we said with the likes of Keane Farrell here a couple of weeks ago, there becomes times early in players' career that they have to make the step up and become from just a normal player into a potential leader for a team going forward. And I think that's what Cathal Kiley done in large parts the other day, because to an extent he would have been always living in the shadow of the brother growing up with the Puck Fadas, and he matched them, and our Ireland Puck Fadas, now he's second to him, and maybe we'll pass him out in the year or two. And both Kileys look good the other day. I thought, Keelan showed a bit of immaturity, and I would have said it to us straight to his face, talking to him.
Does this become a constant problem now, Joe? Because he's going to get a reputation, if he doesn't already have one, about red cards and about frustrations and about maybe getting caught up sometimes in an instance where he then has a problem, that opposition players are going to target him now, because you see a talented player on the opposite end who has a history of getting dismissed, and so therefore you'll target him to try and get him sent off. Yeah,
look, it was just stupidity. It wasn't that he was going out lashing out or putting in massive big hits. It was sloppy yellow cards, and he gets caught in the heat of the moment. I said it to him after the match. I said, like, Keelan, if leather be brains, you wouldn't have enough to saddle a parrot. You have to just learn here and relax, because a needless one, he could have got a second yellow for out on the stand side. Just the line ball came, player didn't hand him back the ball, ploughs out through him, pushes him over, and then Oisin Kelly was coming through, had given the pass and stood his ground, and gives that invite to the referee to show the second yellow. From a KK perspective, they're lucky they were home and hosed, but you don't want that happening, because while he's not going to miss a game, if that's to happen against St Rynagh with 10 or 15 minutes to go, the game takes on a life of its own. But I think by and large he's had a reasonably good year. There was so much malice in it. It's sloppiness from him, and I would have spoken to him. Look, I get on quite well with him off the field, but I think it was all about what Cathal done up the other end. Keelan is the standout name. Everyone knows the ability he had, but Cathal has taken over the mantle of free taking from Kieran Slevin, who has been, for 15 odd years, he's been at the top of his game. But Jordan Quinn has been a revelation at full back. Jerry Healy is coming in with that experience at full forward now. They've kind of accepted that role. Kevin Grogan, again, reeling back the years. Enda Grogan, Damien Clemartin in the half back line. That's a solid team, and the thing about KK is they're probably able to manage the game so well, much like St Rynagh, and that's what happened probably here yesterday. But Belmont didn't fire early. There was no goals which they've been scoring. Oisin Kelly didn't really catch fire.
Why didn't he catch fire then?
I think maybe, I don't know whether it was just from the management or the need to get him into the game, but he started 11, next thing he was 13, out to the wing, coming out to the middle of the field, half back line, trying to get on the ball, make something happen, running from deep. You need Oisin, while he's as powerful as he is, you don't need him back on your own 45 trying to carry the ball the length of the field. But that's credit to KK as well. They had their matchups right. Colin Egan was causing a bit of bother for them early on in terms of his fielding. Joe mattered a couple of half chances, but wasn't at the level he was at in the previous game. Stephen Leonard and Jordan Quinn in particular in that full back line were mopping up everything. Conor Slevin was setting up good attacks with some good deliveries, and just Belmont never really caught fire. Look, the loss of the two boys in the full back line, James Nally and David Kelly, were huge. It forced Trevor Fletcher to rejig, and you can't really afford to be down to your mainstays, your full back line, and KK got a bit of joy inside. But I just think Belmont now are in the territory. That's 4 semi-finals in a row they've lost. 3 of them by a point and now 1 by 4 points. They had a late rally. Mark Cattle got a wonderful goal, but again, McConway and St Rynagh were probably the smart money in terms of backing both of them. They're unbeaten. I just thought I seen something different.
That's why you went against both of them then?
Yeah, look, probably a bit of naivety on my part. I just thought I seen enough, because I would have been doubtful on Burr last year and I would have took a bit of heat from the supporters that you're writing off Burr, but I thought they had turned the corner. I think Barry Whelan has still stepped down from last night, so they're going to have to go and try and build a new team. There'll be doubts over whether Brian Mullins will return. Paul Cleary was nursing a couple of bits of injuries coming in, came in very late yesterday, had a half a goal chance. It was smothered up by the Ryan's defence. Sean Ryan was kind of carrying a knock coming in. A lot of years in those legs. It's like looking at Burr and St Rynagh. Burr got the perfect start, perfect toe in the game. They led by a point. Rynagh drew, led by a point, led by 2. They had a chance here yesterday. It was a pivotal moment to go 4 clear. Owen Cattle just pulled the 45 or 65 rather to the right hand side of the post. Rynagh get a score, 2 more after it, and all of a sudden they're level and Rynagh kick on.
The story just sounds so familiar though, because this is like the last kind of 12-15 minutes of last year's county final. This is like the first group game against Kilcormac where Burr faded out of the game after the water break. When something happens that often, it becomes a repeated sequence. That's not by luck, that's not by chance. Burr have faded out of big games in the last 2 years.
They have, and that was the question marks they had over them. That's why I thought, looking at the dismantlation, you could say, of both Colery and Sir Kieran, was they had turned that corner. 8 scores against Sir Kieran, 4 yesterday. 1 point from 3 different players, the rest from Owen Cattle, and 1 point from play from Cattle. That's 4 points from play, realistically, over the hour from your forward unit. Not enough. They had a couple of half-goal chances. Maybe they could have felt, Conor Hernan got a yellow here when Burr were trying to set up a goal chance late on. He also took a man out, a clever foul in my opinion, because Colin Mulrooney's bearing down a goal. Early in the game, 6-7 minutes in, should there have been a yellow there, and maybe Conor Hernan walking towards the end of it, that's something you'll ride those challenges early as a defender and get away with them. But Burr only had a couple of half chances. The ball spilled to Niall lines, he pulled, didn't make the cleanest of connection to get them back in the game late on. But just the spread of scores St Rynagh had, my big turning point I thought for Burr was, could Oisin Murphy and Jimmy Irwin completely snuff out Luke O'Connor and Aaron Kenny? And the overall answer was no, because Luke O'Connor and Aaron Kenny were on fire yesterday. Aaron Kenny got a goal on 7 now, 7 place balls, but he won quite a number of his own frees and in general was a good link man for play. But the whole Rynagh team is built around Sean Dolan. He's an absolute proverbial dog in the best sense. He's like if you had him and Conor Matton for KK, going into battle, you'd row in behind them, because they just don't really care about themselves, and they're just players that you could count on to put their face in front of a hurl, and Sean Dolan, you look back on him, he's everywhere and he's linking the play, and you'd say he's like a Bonner Matt Roll setting up, but next thing you look at the programme, 3 points from play. And he gave Brian Watkins a third time. Now, Brian Watkins struck a lot of ball, but under the pressure from Sean Dolan closing, there was a serious amount of misplaced passes for Burr yesterday. St Rynagh through Pat Cameron, Ben Keneally, Matthew Maloney, heads up hurling. The delivery of ball that Luke O'Connor and Aaron Kenny were getting made it hard on the likes of Jimmy Irwin and Oisin Murphy. Now, they're done fine by no matter were either of them cleaned. Oisin Murphy, in particular, put in a couple of big moments in the match in terms of defending. But when you have space and quality ball going in, you've seen it yourself. Rynagh are kind of becoming masters at playing it out through the lines and setting up that platform to attack, and they're starting to manage games that bit better again.
Yeah, and look, one of the criticisms there was about Rynagh once upon a time was that they tried to run the ball a bit too often and maybe hurled a bit too nice. Sean Dolan gives you a good balance and he can win you the ball, and it means they can go a bit longer from time to time. As you mentioned, the likes of O'Connor give them just a little bit of pace now at this stage, which allows them to mix it up a little bit, and that could be important in this final against KK. Before we get the expert opinions of both Brian Carroll and of Johnny Dooley, big day, yes, big weekend I should say, because they were across 2 days for both Drumcullen and for Kinnity. We spoke about the fact that these 2 semi-finals at Senior B effectively worked out to be county finals in their own right because there was promotion on the line. Now, I'm sure that Darby is going to be very interesting with the Senior B final on Sunday week, but at the same time, the big achievement for the year for both teams was to get back up to senior level. Yeah,
look, huge. I suppose when I was talking to you last week, we were previewing a game, and while obviously as part of the panel you couldn't give too much away, there was massive, I suppose, confidence riding on our game, but massive apprehension because, we've been out here, we've been in places where we've got to that semi-final, quarter-final hurdle, and, there's a lot of work going into our club. We had a couple of years there with Paddy Carroll, and we were so close as well. Adrian Clancy came back in. He had been with us for 1 year and, of course, got the St Rynagh senior job. And there's a lot of work going on in our club. We are a small club, but we're a proud club. And what we've done, we're under no illusions going up Senior A next year. We need to progress the club on a bit further. We have a strong underage structure, with our neighbour Sorkirn. We're in the under 13A final. The under 15s are still involved in their championship. The under 17s had a good run, and we have a strong under 11 team come behind it. Our kind of mantra will be that you leave the jersey in a better place. And whether you're playing or involved in the club, we have a lot of good people there. And it was hugely important for us to get back, because bringing the championship to 10 teams next year, we all knew that getting to the semi-final was essentially your county final.
This is the golden year because it becomes more difficult to get up next season.
The way it worked out, well, look, Carrigan Riverstown relegated yesterday. We could have been in that position if results had gone our way. We had a do-or-die game against Kinnity. We let ourselves down here, and to an extent let our club and supporters down against Lusma for a performance. But, we're a loyal bunch. We would have had some words together. We kept everything in-house. We trained hard. A lot of the guys there this year, I know you'd have the old cliches, you die for each other in a band of brothers, but there's not kind of a man in our dressing room that I wouldn't, love as nearly like a brother. And it was very emotional, to get back up. And even thinking back on it, the emotional died down because we want to finish off the job and go well against a very, very fancy Kinnity side in the county final. We're neighbours. There was probably more pressure on Kinnity to deliver and come back up because of them just recently going down. We're down since 2014. It'll be 10 years to the day since we won our intermediate county final after getting relegated. So I've played on teams that suffered, the enormity of relegation and going down. It was a hugely emotional day in Bor. We got ourselves back into it with that victory over Kinnity. Another result went our way. You take the look when you get it. But much like us, there was a lot of pressure on Kinnity. Look, we'll preview the final another day, but Kinnity as well, you take your hat off to them. They had a job to do. When you come down, there's a massive target on your back. Much like there was with Sorkirn, much like there was with Drumcullen. We won in 2010 and came back up. It's a hard job to do.
It's because the expectation's on you automatically, because Kinnity have been a big traditional team for a long time. They go down to the second flight. The minute they went down, every team would have been licking their lips at the chance of getting a shot at them this year.
Absolutely, and it'll be no more than us in the county final with them. I socialise in Kinnity quite a bit. There's a lot of crossover. We lads that know each other inside out. A lot of the young lads that hang around together. Everyone knows everyone now in this day and age with social media and stuff. And when Kinnity went down, there would have been a lot of hurt there. And you get it hard from your own supporters too. And you come out in games and everyone is trying to. It's getting harder for rural clubs to keep things going and keep young lads interested and stuff. And this is a massive time now for Kinnity. It's a massive time for Drumcullen. It's exciting times. When you were going training, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, the evenings are drawn in, the floodlights are on. All of a sudden, a couple of cases of tea and sandwiches come out, and players are hanging on for a chat. And there's more people looking to wash jerseys and get the coveted ticket. And there's been a huge uptake in games. This is what you hurl for. Look, 10 years is a long time. Conor Gath, probably our greatest club servant, like Brian Mullins, started hurling in 1996. He's 40 years of age now, put in 2 stellar performances to try and drag us back up. It's, as he said, it's 10 years since we were in a county final, and if we don't take this opportunity, who's to say it's not going to be 10 or 20 more? But all we'd hope is that we're after buying our club a bit of time to build, even if it happens that we get relegated in a year or two back down to this level, that we didn't drop any lower, because you get one chance in rural clubs to bring on youngsters. Kinnity know that, we know that. But look, the final will take on a life of its own. Both teams are up, there's a certain safety net. Both teams after the match, there'll be a bit of respect there, and we'll celebrate the fact that we're both up. But there'll be a cup up there to be collected on them steps, and I know our lads will want it every bit as much as Kinnity. Yeah,
well, Kinnity's victory against Clodagh Gales, Tullamore's defeat to Drumcullen means Drumcullen against Kinnity is the Senior B final, and both Kinnity and Drumcullen will form a new look 10-team championship in the Malloy Environmental Systems Offaly Senior Hurling Championship next season. Just to take a look back on what's happened the weekend just gone by, here's some of the highlights from the 2 semi-finals with thanks to Offaly GATV. And Joe has also been speaking to Offaly legend, the hero of the 1994 All-Ireland final, Johnny Dooley, after yesterday's game between Birr and St Rynagh.
So we now know, Johnny, the lineup of this year's Malloy Environmental Systems Offaly Senior Hurling Championship final. Kilcormac got over Belmont yesterday. Belmont with a late rally in that game, but a county semi-final here between St Rynagh and Birr, and just down that home straight, Rynagh took control.
Yeah, Ryan's pulled out all the stops, showed all their experience when it really mattered. You could sense from early on, okay, Bor seemed to have the upper hand in a lot of areas on the field, but when they regrouped for the water break after half time, you could sense from that period on, the Rhinos really took over that game, and they were, as I said, they were hunting in packs, they were chasing down Bor, they didn't give them time on the ball, and when they were playing it in, actually probably physically they were overpowered them as well in crucial positions on the field, and they're going to go hard for the final, obviously as the current champions.
The last 10 or 12 years, a lot of county finals have been decided by St Rynagh and Kilcormac. They know each other inside out. Rynagh, the current county champions under Ken Hogan, looking to do 2 in a row, which they found it hard to do. A lot of teams find it hard to do back to back in Offaly, a competitive championship, and Kilcormac be maybe quietly confident under their new manager Tom Murphy that they've introduced a bit of talent and could be the favourites for the county final.
Yeah, I suppose Rhinos, probably being the reigning champions, probably will go in possibly as the slight favourites, but there won't be much between them. As I said, I was watching the game yesterday with KK, and they've injected a nice little bit of youth and a bit of freshness into their team, and also to have all those experienced guys and the lads on the line as well. So both teams, actually, even St Rynagh have introduced a few new guys in there this year. Aaron Kinney's in there, and Luke O'Connor and a few more guys. So there's a lot of experience on both teams, and I don't think there's going to be a lot between the two teams. Both teams play a similar type of game. Both teams are fairly physical, and they won't be playing extra defenders or playing any of that sort of thing. So I think it's going to be a very entertaining final.
Before the semi-finals were on, I was tipping that maybe Bor and even indeed Belmont to a lesser extent might get over the line, but St Rynagh, like KK yesterday, really managed the game well in the last 15 minutes because, Belmont maybe weren't as close to KK for large periods yesterday, but Bor led for a long time throughout in this game.
Yeah, Bor definitely, yeah. And it took a lot for St Rynagh. They just held their time. They didn't panic. They didn't get excited. They knew what they had to do. And that's a great sign of a team. Even though early on in the game they knew they weren't playing the way, but that was mainly due to Bor as well. I've seen Bor playing Clarine and I've seen them playing Coolderry, and Bor are a lively outfit and they've lots of good young hurlers, and I'm sure their day will come as well. They probably need to learn from this, and they'll be very disappointed going home tonight, but it was to be St Rynagh's day, and they've used all their. When you look at the likes of Dermot Horn coming in off the line there, and they have other players coming in, and they have a very strong panel. Their panel is very strong, and they have loads of options there.
You mentioned, a lot of young players that have loads of days ahead of them, but maybe a word to particularly the most experienced man out there, Brian Mullins, who served Bor so well. Be no surprise if he comes back next year, but if that's to be his final campaign for Bor, hurling I think since 1996 at senior level for the club, incredible servant to Bor.
Oh, Brian Mullins owes nothing to Bor or Offaly, and I hurled against him all those years ago, 20 plus years ago, and it's credit to the guy that he's still togging out for Bor, and look, he never lets Bor down. He's a solid, steadying influence on the defence, and has been for all those years, and I think if whatever his decision is, Brian Mullins is legendary in Bor.
Ken Hogan, since he came in to St Rynagh last year, they'd been to a few finals, beaten in a few finals up and down. Ken Hogan, a lot of success, particularly with Offaly club teams. He's really started to steady that ship with St Rynagh. They've won one. They're in the final now in 2 weeks' time. And Joey O'Connor, who a lot was spoken about with his suspension, was out. He comes back and adds a lot of experience and pace to that Rynagh midfield.
Yeah, Ken Hogan's around a long time, and he's a very experienced manager, and he's gone back years and years of managing clubs and county under 21 teams in Tipperary and different things. So, he'll leave no stone unturned, and that's very important coming into a final. And you can see with Rynagh, they're playing a very disciplined game of hurling as well, and they know what they're about, they know how they want to play the game, and they play in straight lines. They're not going across the field or going backwards, and when they get the ball, they're letting it into where it's going to hurt. And I'd expect, Ken will have his homework done on KK for the final.
Lastly, on the final itself, Kilcormac and St Rynagh, two hugely experienced teams the last 15 years or so. Kilcormac with more titles, they have 4 to St Rynagh 2 in that period. What do you expect in the final? Both teams, as we said, carry that experience. They know how to handle these games. The pressure won't get to them. Kilcormac, they have a lot of the older group still there, a lot of success in that group, but they've introduced the likes of Lachlan Kavanagh, Cahill Kiley. They've started to slowly step up and maybe turn the guard a bit towards Kilcormac.
Yeah. Look, I'd expect KK have nothing to lose. They can throw caution to the wind in this final. I think Rhinos will be the slight favourites and that, but everything's there to play for KK. And when you look back at Rhinos, you'd nearly assume they'd have more than 2 titles won. They seem to be around for so long, but they've lost a good number of finals as well before they got to win. So they'll be a bit edgy as well. And finals are hard won. When you get into a final, they're difficult to win. And it's whichever team on the day shows up, and you have to go and express yourself and want to show what you're capable of doing. And I just have Ryan as a slight favourites, but I wouldn't rule out KK because simple reason, as you said, they have 4 championships in the bag. They have a lot of new guys in. Even all their young guys are coming in. They've won underage titles. They're not, KK are a great club for producing good underage squads, and they're constantly winning these titles, and that's good for confidence as well. So they won't be in any way overawed by the occasion, even though they'll possibly have 5 or 6 new guys. But it's what they have on the bench that could swing it their way as well. So I think it's going to be a very close affair.
So there we heard from Offaly legend Johnny Dooley on yesterday's semi-final. We'll now of course hear from Brian Carroll on the other game where he joined me on commentary. And of course Brian, a founder of a Hurler's Life podcast, which is back out this weekend with Eddie Brennan. Of course Brian, a pioneer in the podcast industry. We've probably learned a lot from Brian, and we'll hear his thoughts now.
Well, we're joined now by Brian Carroll, former Offaly hurling captain, and also, Brian, you're about to embark on the 2nd season of your own podcast, A Hurler's Life, and I think the first pod is dropping this week, Brian?
Oh, yeah, look, thanks for giving me the nod there, yeah. Season 2 starts Wednesday, so we're starting with Eddie Brennan. Brilliant interview, I have to say, to get the season up and running, so really looking forward to that. One slight change up in it, probably just going to release every 2 weeks, so that should see 6 episodes this side of Christmas and 6 episodes afterwards, so 12 for the full season. So yeah, look, really looking forward to it again, and there was a great feedback and a great uptake for the first season, and it's something that I've great passion in and got real enjoyment out of it on a very personal level. So every time I chat with some of these hurlers about their careers or whatever, it's just really enjoyable, and I suppose that should be your first point when you're starting into these things.
Well, thanks a lot, Brian, for putting pressure onto us for perhaps very sillily agreeing to do a podcast every week, and you're going, I'll put one out every 2 weeks. I won't put the pressure on myself quite as much as season 1.
I learned from season 1, yeah.
You must have been happy enough though with how it was received. I mean, it went top of the podcast networks in the first few weeks when you brought out season 1. Really good feedback from it too. Did you get that kind of enjoyment? Because I presume when you dip your toe into this, it's a little bit risky, because I know people will know you as a former hurler and so on, but you're still putting yourself out there as the host of your own show here. This is a one-man vehicle.
Yeah, that's exactly what my wife was saying. She had that fear, I suppose. But look, I just said I'd give it a try. That's the truth. Listen, I said this before. I listened to Jamie Carragher's podcast, The Greatest Game. I'm a big Liverpool fan myself, but I just really enjoyed his interviews and the medium that it was. Former player interviewing players he played with or against, and I suppose I just said to myself, look, give it a go, and if people listen, great. And I thought to myself, if I get a couple of thousand people listening, great, I'll keep going. And I suppose it just exploded. I couldn't believe it. Anthony Daly's up there around 15,000 listens at the moment, and most of them are up, close to 10,000 or over. So, it's been fantastic. I didn't expect anything like that. And I said I'd try maybe 3 or 4, and if they went well, we keep going. So that's exactly what's happened.
There you go. No pressure for Joe and I in our own podcast. And we talked to Brian after those numbers he achieved in season 1. You were with Joe on Saturday, Brian, for the first of semi-finals, both on Offaly GATV and also on Midlands 103. And in the end, Kilcormac saw off Belmont, who stuck in it right till the end. But Kilcormac just seemed to have that little bit of kind of extra nous to get out and get themselves back into a county final again. Yeah,
look, they were cruising maybe for a large part of that game, maybe from the first water break right through to maybe the 57th minute, I think it was, when that Matt Carroll scored a wonder goal, to be fair to him, a brilliant finish into the top corner. Nothing Connor could do about that. So I just thought Kilcormac's experience, their strength, physical strength all over the field, the go-to players, and we know most of them. You have Damien Kilmartin in centre back. Jordan Quinn probably was the real guy that took the mantle of that full back place where obviously Gerard Healan used to be for the last couple of years. Kyle Kiley, to me, gave a man the match performance the other day. I know he hit his frees really well, but he really stood up in that second half. Won some hard ball, distributed really well, set up a couple of scores, and then got a brilliant score after Belmont scored that goal. So they have experience as well. Obviously, Gerard Healan had to come in. Kieran Slevin started this time. Peter Geraghty had to come in. But they're also after, blooding in a couple of younger players. Jack Screeney, I thought was excellent. I thought his interception on David Kenny, I know people were calling for a free, but I just thought it was a brilliant interception. The half forward tracking back, the way the modern game has gone, what you'd expect of him. I said it the other day live in commentary. I thought it was very like Tom Morrissey and Limerick, the way he tracked back and one ball deep. And, he played that ball up the field, and eventually Tommy Geraghty won a penalty. That was probably the final nail in the coffin from a Belmont perspective. But, look, to some credit to Belmont, they didn't give it up. They stayed at it, but they will be disappointed. Particularly in the first half, they missed a lot of easy scoring chances. David Nally was excellent in that first half. He got 3 or 4 points in play in that first half and won a couple of frees, which he scored himself. But, even himself, he had 1 or 2 wides, and the rest of them had simple chances. Joe Maher missing a chance 25 yards out. Oisín Kelly with a couple of misses off his favourite left-hand side. So, you can see why they would be disappointed overall with their performance.
I wonder, will it start to get into Belmont's head a little bit too, Brian, that now this is 4 years in a row that they've gone to semi-finals, not been a huge distance away from getting to the final, particularly the 1-point defeats that have in recent seasons. I got the feeling this year, particularly after the disappointment for their footballers the week before, there was a real drive from Belmont to try and get to the final this year.
Yeah, but therein lies the problem of being a dual club when they lose 2 of their full back line. David Kelly in particular is a big loss, and James Nally then as well. The losing the 2 of them was a big blow. No club has them, has that strength and depth that you're able to go and lose such two key, starting 15 to set them up into the hurling then the week after. So that's really, that was a cruel blow. That meant that David Kenny had to start, whereas David obviously usually was coming into games and bringing in his experience, scored a big goal against Rhode when he came on in that game. And, instead he was starting, was only able to see out 45 minutes. And, fair play to him, he came off to a rousing ovation from Belmont, and only rightly so, because he's been a great stalwart for Belmont. And, we all know about his knee trouble over the last couple of years. It's even a wonder that he's even still playing. So credit to him from that perspective. So that was the knock-on effect that losing those 2 players had. And, it's not easy for Belmont when you're trying to make that breakthrough. And, as you said, it can be hard. That's 4 in a row. People will say it's a mental block. I don't think so, being honest. I think it was much more in terms of the personnel that they had in the field, and the fact that they probably just didn't have that strength and depth, added to the fact that they missed so many chances. And when Oisín Kelly only scores a point from play, invariably, that usually means that Belmont won't win these tight games.
Was that down to Oisín Kelly's own performance, or was Oisín Kelly particularly well marshalled at the weekend, Brian?
Look, it probably... well marshalled is probably a bit harsh. Like, he had a couple of point scoring opportunities in the first half. You would have said that he was up and running, and he scored a brilliant point late on. So, he had ball, but I suppose it comes back to the fact that Kilcormac got a grip in the game after that first water break. They went from being 3 points up to being, I think it was 7 up at half time, 15-8. And then they just took control. And I suppose in the second half, the Kilcormac backs just sat back. That half-pack line in particular, they knew exactly what to add. There was a good few occasions where all 6 of them were inside the D. Damien Kilmartin's a master at that, just completely sitting outside the 21. Kevin Grogan intercepted a couple of balls as well when the ball was played dangerously across the 21. So they knew exactly what to want. There was absolutely no space up front for that. And from a Belmont perspective, and they weren't really able to get Oisín onto the ball, and it was robbing Peter to pay Paul when they did bring him out, because the only point he scored was from maybe the middle of the field. It was a brilliant score, but it was too little and it was too late at that particular stage.
Yeah, it sounds like classic KK, being good at kind of managing that space in front of their own goal. Is there a slight freshness about KK this year as well, though, given that they've had a change of management? As you mentioned, some of their players that are coming through the 20s team over the last couple of years are now settling in as senior players, and those who would have been on the All-Ireland club final team now have different roles, and guys like Jared coming off the bench. Is there kind of a new feel about Kilcormac, or is this a similar template to what you would have seen when they got to the county final 2 years ago?
I think they've managed the transition really well of those older players, that they still have a role, albeit if they're starting, they know that they're not going to finish out the 60 minutes or vice versa. If they know they're coming on to do a job, and they've blooded in the youngsters, Jack Sweeney's first year, maybe Lachlan Kavanagh's thereabouts for the last couple of years. So these guys have got their opportunity this year, and they were given those group stages, the group games to try and cement their place and learn the system, I suppose, from Kilcormac. You're right, they haven't really changed how they go about the business, and why should they? Because it's been very, very successful for them over the last decade or so. So they know exactly what they're about. Big, strong, physical, particularly down the centre. Their backline, keeps it very, very tight. They have a dynamic midfield. Dylan Murray and Keelan Kiley, obviously, but I suppose Dylan Murray would have to up his performance. David Nally definitely troubled him for most of that game the last day. Keelan Kiley showed his class at times, and then showed, really what he needs to eradicate from his game, getting caught up and getting a second yellow card. I think the first one in particular was very soft. I think he had a big hit on Aaron Brazel, I think it was. I didn't think it was a yellow card at the time. I didn't see a replay now, but from watching it live, I didn't think it was a yellow card. But then he got caught up, running after one of the cornerbacks, trying to get involved in things. Could have got a second yellow there, and then eventually got a silly second yellow from his perspective to receive his marching orders. And look, it didn't matter for a finish, and he will be able to play in the final, but he really does need to eradicate that from his game, because he's better than that. And I said that the other day. And when you look at the fact that when Belmont scored that goal, it just made that work a little bit harder for Kilcormac going down the home stretch, being down to 14.
Yeah, look, we know all about Keelan's talent, but the risk for him is, if the reputation persists that he might lose the head, or he could potentially get himself sent off, you're going to have players who are going to try and wind him up during games, and they're going to try and get him involved in things, aren't they?
Yeah, well, look, I don't know. I'm not that type of player, so I suppose I can't really comment on that. But what I will say is, sometimes they get soft yellow cards. I see the same happening Kevin Brady from a Cooley perspective. There's times when other players will pull similar, we'll call it strokes, or pull hard, or infringements or whatever, and it's let go. But when you get that name for that type of player, Keelan Kiley's one of those players. He'll pick up those yellows, the same as Kevin Brady. And I think sometimes your reputation precedes you. So, but I think still the onus on him to eradicate the silly ones that he got involved in towards the end.
Self and Joe were kind of saying on the radio a couple of weeks ago, one thing I've noticed from KK, and I'll admit I haven't got to any of their games, but I've watched some of them on streams. They seem to have just gone about their business in a very workmanlike way so far. Weren't really troubled too hard in their group games. Came through without doing anything huge, like in running off massive wins, but winning their games. And they've now beaten Belmont in the semi-final. Really, going into a county final, KK have done very little wrong so far this year, Brian.
No, sure. Look, at the end of the day, the two teams that are in the final are unbeaten, and obviously Kilcormac are that way as well. Burt troubled them for 45 minutes. They really did. That water break came, I suppose, just around the right time for a KK perspective, and they brought on their strength and depth that day. Ger Healing and it was Kieran Slevin, and only for Breeder in the goal, they could have won that game quite comfortably. Against us in Cooley in that second game, they were in took control after the first water break, complete control, went 7 up at half time. But I suppose we just found a way. We got maybe a soft goal, but we found our way back into that game, and we could have snuck something out of it. But still KK, they did enough, as you said. But what they were doing, as I said already, in those couple of games, is they're blooding those youngsters, getting them used to the system, and they've just been improving game on game. Clarine game, I suppose, Sarah Kieran, it was just a shot at nothing from a Sarah Kieran perspective, and they acquitted themselves really, really well, and just, I suppose, ran just a bit short in the end. And as I said, I didn't fancy Belmont going into that game. I know a lot of people did. I called it beforehand. I thought KK would have the experience, and I thought they'd have the firepower at both ends of the field.
Well, you mentioned
to see them through it.
You mentioned Burr fading out after the water break in the first group game. Again, faded after the water break in the semi-final yesterday against St Rynagh. Rynagh outscoring them by 1-3 in the closing stages of the game. Good finish from the defending county champions. But I'm sure that's what's going to annoy Barry Wheelahan when he thinks about that game this week and the rest of the Burr team, is that they were in a good position again at halftime, not quite as strong as they were in the county final last year, but the scores eventually dried up in the game like they did in the final 11 months previously. Yeah,
it seems to be a running team for Burr, and it is frustrating from their perspective. And when I thought Ben Keneally was moved over to Morgan Watkins, because Morgan started really, really well, troubled Stephen Wynn a lot. Maybe only got a point for play, but won a couple of frees and set up a couple of scores as well. So I thought when Ben moved over and quietened him, the scores from Burr seemed to dry up. They only got 4 points in play over the whole hour, so that's not going to win you a semi-final. Owen Cal he was off target with a couple of frees. There was a couple of really difficult ones, but then he'll be annoyed at himself. Maybe his very first free at the start of the game, and that 65. That whole passage of play was a big moment in the game. You had 9 lines bearing down on goal. I thought he did really well to avoid the hook from Ben Keneally. He feinted, threw it up, and just brought it back on the hurl. And Conor Clancy came out and smothered him, and it was unlucky from Niall Lyon's perspective. Went out for the 65, then Oisin misses that. or sorry, Owen Cahill misses that, and you'd expect him to score that, you know, especially the form that he's been in for the last couple of years. And down the other end, then, you know, Breeder gives away a free, a borderline one. You know, it could have been just as easily given as a free out for being bottled up, whereas he was done for over carrying, and it was a tap over free. So instead of being best case scenario 6 points up for Burr, you know, definitely should have been 4. It ended up being 2 points only, and, you know, Rhine started their comeback. So I think that was a big moment in the game.
Yeah, and I think in fairness to Owen Cahill, who is going to still be, without playing in the final, thereabouts as top scorer in the county for the year, given the scoring that he's done. He has a great weight of expectation in terms of the volume of scores he has to put compared to the forwards around him. It's that's big pressure on a young man to have to hit every free over pretty much, and to carry as much of a scoring burden as he does on that Burr team.
Yeah, but look, that's what he's cut himself out for, and if he's going to be one of the best forwards in the county, and he's taking the frees with the county at the moment, that's the pressure that he has to expect, you know. And he is able to carry that pressure, and he's going to have to learn. And look, I think it was just one of those days. He missed a couple of frees. It happens is all. It's happened to everyone down through the years in the game, and you know, he should learn from it and be better for it, and back himself probably. You know, so he has the talent. There's no doubt about it. It just was one of those days for him, and you know, he still hurled reasonably well. He got a brilliant point from playing that first half over his left shoulder, right out on the terrace side. A great score. So look, it's probably a little bit harsh to just be talking about Owen Cahill and the ones he missed, because, you know, Burr missed a lot of opportunities. You know, there was some real easy point scoring opportunities that were missed. You know, Colin Mulrooney, I think in the first half, missed one straight in front of the goal. Stephen Lonergan had a couple of shots. Maybe they weren't on from Stephen. He maybe probably should have been known to play the ball around, but I suppose when you expect to score them as well. And, you know, Shawnee hurled a lot of ball in the middle field, probably hurled the most amount of ball of the 4 midfielders, but, you know, his radar was just a little bit off, missed an easy enough chance in the first half, and then a couple dropped short in the second half. So, you know, you can see why Burr are kicking themselves.
Yeah, look, 15 wides, you're not going to win a game if you've that kind of scoring conversion rate. In particular problem in the second half, when the wides started to count up at a time that Rhine started to get crucial scores at crucial times. And you talk about players who have an impact from the bench. Rhine have found a really good way of using Dermot Horn over the last couple of years.
They certainly have. And look, you know, I was just thinking about his goal. Like, I would say most players in that position tapped that ball over the bar. You know, there was 2 points in it. It would have put Ryan's 3 up, and instead he just decided to carry it, and it looked like he ran into trouble. It was actually a poor pass, because he just kind of half flicked it off the hurl, and I thought it was brilliant control from Aaron Kenny to take it on the hurl, and in the one movement, you know, doubled on it into the net. It was a brilliant finish, because he had a bit of work to do, because that ball was played to his feet as opposed to his hands. So I thought it was a great finish, but still, as I said, Dermot Horn did really well and showed that little bit of you know, the experience and that little bit of drive, really, to go straight at the goal and take the game by the horns, I suppose. He missed an easy chance himself. You know, after that, I think it was he'd be kicking himself. You know, he did really well out in front of Dylan Watkins, and he really troubled Dylan Watkins when he came in full forward. But look, I suppose you have to give Rhinus credit. They have a lot of experience on that team. They have players now that have maybe lost 3 or 4 county finals, and they've won 2. So they've played in big games a lot down through their career. And, you know, when you add in someone as good a talent as Ben Keneally in your defence, and you can play in any of the 6 positions or midfield, you know, you have the best defender in Offaly, and he can go on any danger man that's causing any trouble. And we've seen them do that over the last couple of years. But they have a lot of other experience, obviously. Pat Cameron, you know, Gary Keneally, Stephen Wynn. And, you know, I suppose like Rhinus, like Kilcormac, they have, you know, brought on a couple of players. You know, you see Luke O'Connor starting to make his way at senior level. Obviously, Aaron Kenny's going into an even better senior hurler as it goes on. And, you know, they've made changes from their team last year as well, and starting to maybe look at the future and where that can actually go for them. Matthew Maloney manning the centre half back position. You know, quite solid there as well. Got a great long range point too. So, you know, Rhinus, as I said, have a lot of experience. But probably the big thing, you know, the big talking point for me going into this county final, if we were to just quickly preview it, would be the fact that Rhinus have not beaten Coollerry or Kilcormac in a county final. You know, this particular team I'm talking about. Yeah. The 2 county finals that they won were against Burr. And that's no disrespect to Burr. It's just obviously Kilcormac, and Coollerry have been the form teams over the last decade. They've both won 4 titles each. So this is the opportunity from a Rhinos perspective. For me, this will. It's almost their calling game now. If they want to really be held up in high regard for what this team is capable of doing, I think they need to win this county final, because they need to beat someone like McConway or Lowry in a county final.
I'm sure as a player, it would always be that doubt in the back of your mind. Despite what you've won, a lot of this group of St Rynagh players have tasted defeat to KK in 3 county final days.
Yeah, and lost to us in 2015 as well. So, that has to eat away at them. There was a couple of those finals maybe when they were a little bit younger and more naive, that they turned up and thought, they were the form team in the championship, and KKF just stuttered and found their way into a county final, but they knew how to do the business on the day, and that's exactly what they did. But they probably bullied St Rynagh. The only thing I'll say is St Rynagh are a lot more seasoned team, and we have to give them a bit more credit for that. And I think this year and last year, when the bullying was to be done, the day we're doing it. So I think it lends itself to an excellent county final. I think, as I said, it might sound harsh, but I think the onus is on Rhinos to go and win this. For me, to cement their legacy as a really, really good St Rynagh team, I think they have to beat KK in this final.
Yes, and earlier, of course, as we are here to preview Rhode and Tullamore in this weekend's Offaly Senior Football Final, we also spoke to Tullamore manager Niall Stack across the road in O'Brien Park in their recently developed gym. Is it one at the start of the year you maybe envisage getting to? Because when you came in and got this job, you would have been looking at introducing a lot of youngsters there. You knew you had experience maybe to move on as well, and lads to know their roles. Has it been difficult, number one? And two, has the county final come as a huge bonus to you?
I suppose getting this job, Joe, I would have always had ambition, I suppose, to win a county final. With the whole COVID situation and stuff like that, yeah, I did feel a bit aggrieved we got no league, and I thought it would take longer than what it took. I suppose to get to a county final now, I thought it would just take a lot more games as opposed to the actual season. I thought we would get to one this season and even possibly win one. I've always thought as a player with Tullamore, I suppose, and I think I couldn't change that mindset going in as a manager. I don't know what the second part was. What was the second part?
Just, I suppose, when you're looking at a lot of young players you would have come in with, you would have seen come up along through the ranks. They have had very, very good minor and successful minor teams the last few years. Integrating them into a squad with a lot of established lads, was it hard to find a balance?
No, I didn't think it was. I suppose these younger lads just have such belief in themselves, and the older lads are just such good leaders. We have a base of players that are at inter-county level for a while, in terms of Johnny Maloney, Mickey Brazel, Decky Hogan, Nigel Bracken, Paul McConway, and they're great at bringing young lads on. And to be honest, the self-belief of the young lads themselves, they just believe that they belong at this standard, and county finals where they expect to be honest.
There's always that, I won't say myth, but there's always that fear when Tullamore get to a knockout stage around the county. It kind of reverberates around it. Once they get to it, they're very, very hard beaten in a semi-final or final. Was that a confidence just ekes through your squad once you managed to get out of the group?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's in every Tullamore player's DNA, every club member's DNA in this club. We believe that at any given time we can win a championship. I suppose even when I first started off, I played in 98. One game we were knocked out in 99. One game we were knocked out in 2000. We won a championship. And the same 2002, we were beaten in group games, in my experience, and we won it. 2007, we were beaten in a group game. We won it in 2013. We were famously beaten by Rhode well, and we managed to beat them in a final. Now, it wouldn't be fair to say Rhode have dominated for the last, I don't know how many years. Alan McNamee's haul of titles alone will tell you how much they've dominated. But yeah, on any given day, we definitely believe we can. We definitely believe it's in our own control. To make sure that Rhode don't perform and that we do. So, yeah, I think I did have a genuine belief that we could win the championship this year.
The year itself probably, a strange year by all accounts. No matter whether it's senior football or junior hurling or underage, it's been a strange year. But everyone still knew there was going to be some form of a championship. The opening round defeat to Cap and Cor probably sharpened minds that bit more, because it was in the melting pot. Cap and Cor were always going to be up for the local derby. The way the group worked out, it turned to be dog eat dog. He probably had the toughest group in the championship. Was that defeat maybe a springboard to maybe, get that monkey off the back, get the commitment levels up and realise we're back in championship mode here now?
Yeah, I suppose that's one way of looking at it. I felt in the actual game itself, just to go back to the Cap and Cor game, I felt we left a lot of goals behind us. Now that's not taking anything away from Cap and Cor, because to be honest with you, when the game was in the melting pot and there to be won, they went and won it. I have no qualms about that, and I admire them as a club, to be honest. And they've good players. Like, I had Bill Carroll in the school there, and for me, he's inter-county standard. I watched a video of him against Clara as well. He's been outstanding. I think he's definitely someone that John Mahan should look at. But did it sharpen the minds? I think it did, to be honest. I know myself, I didn't sleep probably for 2 weeks after the game. It just, there was huge pressure in our group. I think there was a pressure of expectation as opposed to not working hard enough. I think we were working hard enough, but I think there was a bit of a burden on this team that just felt a weight of expectation on them. I think they carried it last year as well. It's not that they had a really good management in John Rouse and the lads last year. I'd known him very well. I worked with John. I just think among the players themselves, they nearly almost wanted it too much. They were carrying that expectation. They were tying up a bit. So in terms of monkey off the back, yeah, I think it took the pressure off them to go up and just play Rhode. There's no expectation. We played quite well. Aaron Levy got sent off. Things didn't go away. Rhode were exceptionally, I don't know how you'd put it. They just put us away, But the Clara game, definitely our minds were sharpened to that. I felt getting up that morning we were going to, we had a really good chance of beating Clara and beating them well, if I'm to be honest. Having done my analysis, Cappencurse should have beaten Clara well. I admire Mark Scanlon and Tony Dalton are doing over there. Like, they're blood and young lads. It didn't pay off for them. I think if they had a league campaign, to be honest, they wouldn't be relegated. And I'd have a strong opinion on relegation this year. Even though I'm looking now at the other end, I think it's very unfair on Clara that they're relegated. And that's coming from a Tullamore man. They'd be our biggest rivals. But I just know myself, we were staring at... we were staring down the throat of relegation, and I just don't think it's fair having had no league campaign. That's my own opinion. I don't know.
It's probably a town, as you said, there's always is the weight of expectation, be it football or hurling, and I know you're having a massive crossover of dual players, but look, the bulk of this interview will probably be played after the weekend with the hurling. Obviously, as a Drumcullen man, I'd be hoping the Tullamore aren't in a hurling final the following week, but like, we'll talk about that another day. But even in the hurling, in the football, there is pressure on Tullamore to deliver. They're such a big town. They're steeped in GA history. They're second in the Roll of Honour. Probably something is always in the back of Tullamore players' minds to take that back off Road in time, But going to the semi-final knockouts itself, for the general view was for large parts of that game, Tullamore were in control. It was a case of Forban having to play the catch-up. Obviously, we know the drama that happened after, but about the game itself, it probably showed then that there was a different mindset, and Tullamore realised we're in knockout mode now, and they probably managed that game very well.
Yeah, I think we managed it very well, looking back at it, Joe. I think for a large part we controlled the game. I'm after looking back at the stats of it there. Our possession rates were massive, and our possession rates were quite good against Rhode as well, to be honest, but they were so slick. Taking nothing away from Forban, I think we should have won that game by 4 or 5 points, to be honest, in normal time. That's just if we had to put our chances away, and I don't think Rhode will give us that chance. If we're not as slick as they are, or a little bit slicker than what we were against Forban, I don't think we'll beat Rhode.
I suppose we'll have to touch on the penalties. Look, a strange situation for both managers, both Sean Dempsey and yourself. It was new, it was historical, but there was still that expectation to deliver because there was going to be no sympathy if you're the team to lose on the day. Yeah,
it's funny now, I suppose, for me, but looking back at it, I actually looked when Johnny Maloney missed his penalty, and all I could think about, I suppose, a bit selfishly, was about how unfair it was, how well we'd played and everything else, and within a few minutes Forban had lost. And I mean it genuinely. I didn't go near my players after they went straight to the Forban camp. I just felt so sorry for them because it was a really cruel way to go out. Maybe now I can't believe it, but I'm kind of empathetic to other managers I'm starting to notice and other people's situations, and I just think a replay would have been the fairest result. But look, it was history. It was very unusual thing to be involved with but it's done now, we just all eyes on the road now.
Yeah, and as you said, it would have been the cruelest of blows had Johnny Maloney's penalty been one to suffer, because I think coming out of that game, the word around the place was Johnny Maloney scarcely deserved to be on the losing side. He was that good, and characters like Johnny, they've just reinvigorated this club because he's been massive for Tullamore this year.
Yeah, Johnny was really good. A lot of people have opinion on where he should play, including Johnny. I just think he's a very powerful player. He sets huge high standards for himself. I know in among the Offaly dressing room, having talked to a couple of people in hurling clubs, actually I helped last year, they were telling me, just how revered he is in there, how high standards he sets for himself. But didn't surprise me at all how well he played the other day. I think he's a big, powerful man. I think he's someone with huge pace. I think he's an inside forward all day, personally. Although I know we have a lot of young lads coming, like the likes of Jack Bryant, the two Keanes, Luke Egan maybe in years to come. Like as a county, we're starting to produce a few. But his power is something I haven't seen all that often. Like I did a bit of work with Tipperary, and Mikey Quinlan would have similar power. And Johnny's just now getting to the pitch of where he should be fitness-wise. He hadn't his fitness right until now. Now he's right fitness-wise, so he can affect the middle eight, he can affect the inside line, and for me, he's an inside forward all day long, but he's been a revelation for us and a good leader.
I suppose you'll probably just look at your own performance. Would you take great heart away the Eden Derry set up against Rhode, because they took it to Rhode from the word go, and I was on co-commentary with John Motton, and he would have said, this is Rhode's game, 7-8 points. Eden Derry didn't read the script and they went with total abandon. You have a lot of players obviously now playing in their first final, and going to the game itself, you're playing a Rhode team who were probably wounded from last year, but also you'd see that they can be beaten on this day too.
Yeah, we'll have a plan for them. I'm not so sure we'd go the same way as Eden Derry. I won't lie to you, I haven't seen the Eden Derry game yet. I heard it on the radio. I was going out to another match, but we're not physically very well developed around the pitch as a result of our age profile. As I said to you, Rhode are very slick. They're very well physically developed everywhere, even age-wise, just naturally they're that bit more developed. But our lads don't lack guts. And I played, I think, nearly 20 players the other day. I'll be looking at playing the same amount and just getting everything out of them if we're to try and match Rhode.
2013, a long time for the town not to be in the final here. The same opposition that day was Rhode when you were victorious. Loads of times people go away and manage different clubs, get experience. You're a relatively young manager. To manage your own club, a club that you've been so successful at as a player, what would it mean to bring the Dowling Cup back here, on next Sunday evening?
It'd mean everything, Joe, yeah. It'd mean absolutely everything. It just, for me, even though we're a town club, there's a real sense of community and country feel about this club. We play against the odds a lot of the time when we win things. We're very tight. In my time, you nearly have to be from this side of Kilbeggan Bridge to play. Now it's stretched out among the town, which is a great thing. But we're very cohesive, we're very tight. I know that brings its own problems because we fall out probably at times as a result of it. But it's always, you're falling out in terms of trying to get everybody to the one goal of winning the championship. It's not for personal reasons, It'd just mean everything to me as Tullamore man to win this championship.
And when you come back in around the town, you were away working today, I was away working, you come back in, you start to see the blue and white flags up, and you can see it on the social media to try and get the colour back out. You get that buzz coming into this time of year that the county final is back, and maybe, for the likes of Paul McConway, the likes of Shane Dooley, I'll know they haven't too many more chances. They've obviously played with you over the years, they've been successful. Does that bring more pressure on the leaders, or is it something that they relish in?
No, it's definitely something they relish in. They're greedy, like anybody playing at this level. They're putting far too much into it. All these lads, all their lives, like they live and breathe like county footballers this stage, most club footballers. So, they'll just relish in it. Like, I suppose we've stared relegation, and we haven't gone there. We've stared being third, we haven't gone there. We were stared being knocked out in semi-final stage, we haven't gone there. So we know we're very lucky to be where we are, and we're going to take full advantage of it. Please God, and just play as hard as we can.
And lastly, when the county final is won or lost, it all settles down. It's something you touched on there, and something I spoke to John Motton about. There's an awful lot of shoots of optimism in terms of Offaly football. You mentioned a couple of players there. You looked at, Keane Farrell, Rory Egan there with Eden Derry. You mentioned a couple of the Shamrocks boys, the Tullamore lads. A lot of lads you would have worked with, of course, in Colosh to Column here. I think we can be negative in times in Offaly, in both hurling and football, about where we are and where we want to be, and maybe how quick we want to make that leap. There's a lot of green shoots starting to appear there now again.
Yeah, most certainly, Joe. I'm not too familiar with the hurling, to be honest. I know huge work has gone in, and in around here in particular, through what went on in the school, I can see Clodagh Gales have benefited hugely, with a young side. Ballymere Doro have more than shown how their senior standard. I hope, nothing against yourself, Brent, but I hope Tullamore get back to that side. It's no longer stopped at the blue ball hurling. In terms of football, yeah, working with Colosh to Column, I can just see a huge amount of talent here. I think we have as much talent as any other county in the country, and I really mean that. I think it's how we as a county and as a group of players, I suppose, when you get involved with them, you know, the like of John Mahan sees. The football group I know in particular are a very focused group. I think they've underachieved, if I'm to be honest. I think they're just as talented as any other county in Division 3, lower Division 2. And I think, you know, they are starting to believe it, and they're starting to get knacky forwards that we haven't had since Tom O'Dean or Niall McNulty. I think, you know, you look at the Keens that are coming, you look at Luke Egan, Jack Bryant, these kind of lads, even Morgan Tynan out there in Balnagar, he's very good. I think there is fellas coming like that could easily, you know, push Offaly into upper Division 2, Division 1, who knows, you know.
Offaly and Tullamore's long-serving stalwart Paul McConway speaks about his 14-month injury hell and also his thoughts about what Tullamore can bring to this Sunday's final. A lot of youngsters coming through that you knew, a lot of lads at the twilight of their career maybe moving on to an extent, and it was kind of a transitional period. I think the momentum started to build after that first game. You know, you had a hard start, but it really started to come together as the lads were blooded in.
Yeah, look, I suppose in fairness to the management there, they went with youth, and look, they stuck with them from the first game. You know, it didn't go our way, but you know, I think Johnny Maloney said it during the week that Cavan are actually a decent team as well. So we were up against it. Didn't get the result we wanted, but in fairness to the management, they stuck with the young lads, even going to Rhode. Again, look, wasn't our best performance, but I think the young lads are actually learning as every year goes, or as every game goes on. I think they're just phenomenal since Clara and for bang games. You know, they've really come to age.
And it's probably something that the management has to be credited for, that they didn't panic, because you go against youngsters, they're facing off ominously against Rhode after an opening day defeat and knowing they have to get a result against Clara. It was a case of them maybe developing that bit quicker, which is now going to be successful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the easy thing is to revert the type, you know, and go back to what you know. But look, I think them first couple of games actually really stood to them lads, because they've grown, and look, they're incredible young lads. They're on the back of, I suppose, a lot of them won a schools title this year as well. So they're just mad to learn, keen to develop, you know. And they're actually, for me, you know, I suppose I'm coming towards the latter end of the career, and it's just great. Just being around them, you know, and their enthusiasm and their willingness to learn is fantastic.
It's probably been a hard road for you in terms of the injuries you had to come back from and stay working towards. You know, Shane didn't feature at the very start against Cappancur in the first game. He's been got back into the fold. He had his own injury problems coming off the back of the Offaly Hurlers as well. And probably the young lads, if I was to interview them now, would say that the experience that they've been able to impart off you has been huge for them as well.
Yeah, I suppose look, it's been difficult 14 months, I suppose, personally more than anything. And in many ways, you kind of feel a bit of a fraud, you know, because they're not putting in the hard yards. Difficult, as I said, difficult first two games. They're in the back of the two losses. But look, they stuck with it, and sure, I suppose for me, all they could do was kind of look on. Then they turned it around against Clara, and you know, it's a great performance against Clara. And I think it's a game where they really came of age, you know. So for me, it's yeah, there's, I suppose, a small bit of guilt, and you're going straight into a semi-final, and you can feel that, you know, the lads that got you there in the first place, you know, it's them deserve all the credit, and it is back home with them young lads.
Yeah, but I think now, Paul, to be fair, there's a certain amount of money in the bank in terms of what you put in up to now, so I don't think it's a thing of feeling too guilty. I can see where you're coming from, but the experience would have took you in good stead against Verban, because Verban coming in as county champions, a lot of people would have said outside the county that, you know, Tullamore now are in a knockout stage, you're going to be a different proposition. And as I said tonight, I would have felt for large parts of that game you probably controlled it and maybe should have even won it in normal time.
Yeah, look, I thought we were actually very good against Verban, and as you say, we just couldn't put them away. But again, Verban, they were never going to just disappear either, you know. And you know, an awful lot of credit goes to them, because they just didn't give in. There's times actually, you know, what an injury, a normal time and an extra time, where I think we're 2 points up, and you think we have a one, and just kept coming back. But look, we have fantastic footballers in our squad, and I think some of the older lads, like the Johnny Maloney and Brazil and Declan Hogan and even Aaron Levy as well, they really stood up as well, you know, and look, just got us over the line, you know, some fantastic scores. But as you say, it went down to the wire against Verban, and hopefully that'll stand us well against Rhode in 2 weeks or next week.
For large parts of your early career, and indeed the middle part of it, it was kind of nearly a triangle in terms of pendulum. You had Rhode, you had Clara, you had Tullamore, Eden Derry in and out now and again. The competitiveness of the Offaly Senior Football Championship is huge now, and it probably, you know, you serve the county with distinction, probably going forward for Offaly as well as Tullamore, the way the championship is now and the amount of teams you have putting up their hand can only be huge.
Oh, it is. Look, it's a very competitive championship. You consider where we were last year, you know, in a relegation playoff. And there's no guarantee we're going to beat Graceville either. You know, just on the day, I suppose things went our way. And you look at Clara, who unfortunately got relegated this year, which is, you know, it just shows how competitive the championship is. And look, there's only 8 teams in it, you know, and we could easily have been found ourselves again in another relegation battle, you know. We're just very, very lucky that Clara actually managed to beat Captain Kerr this year. Other than that, we were heading for a relegation battle. So as you say, like, look, it's very, very competitive. As I said, like, to be fair, I suppose Rhode have been, I think this is the 9th final in a row, so look, they have been top dogs for the last number of years. And look, it's for us, we had to put our heads down now in 2 weeks' time and just put an awful lot of work in the next week and a half, because we have a huge challenge ahead of us.
I suppose like any derby, be it hurling, be it soccer, be it football, when you're playing your real, you know, contenders in it, Rhode and Tullamore is going to take on a life of its own. I think what has gone on before throughout the years probably doesn't really affect this outcome. It's 7 years since, I suppose, Tullamore were in a final and Rhode were the opposition that day. He won that day, of course. Is it a game where it just takes on a life itself, or do you read much into your own form and Rhode's form?
No, look, it's a one-off game, especially look at the final as well, you know, so these games tend to take their own pattern too, you know. I don't think they're going to be too interested in what Tullamore brought before. For us, it's not going to be of much interest to us either with what Rhode team went before us as well, or the history between the two teams. It's a one-off game, as you said, like, these games have a tendency just to take their own pattern, and we just hope to get winners at the end, you know.
The youth that you've brought in, of course, successful minor teams, successful school teams, you've probably integrated them a bit quicker than while Rhode have been bringing on a couple of youngsters as well. There's a lot of guys there that you would have soldiered against throughout your career, and you know what they bring to the table.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Look, for me anyway, I think this year we've actually gone very well at junior level, the junior A and junior B teams, and it's actually given us a chance to just develop some young lads that wouldn't really get game time otherwise, you know. There's a couple of youngsters there that just maybe not quite at senior level yet, but get to know the games now with the junior A's and junior B's. So it's great, you know, it's great to have that kind of building block for them as well. And hopefully in a couple of years' time, we might get some of those players as well to senior level. So look, yeah, we're building as a club, and suppose we kind of neglected it for a few years, and hence why we haven't been at the top of the table. You know, it's simple as that. And you're beginning to see the fruition now of just the hard work that's gone in at underage. You know, we managed to win a minor championship a couple of years ago. We're competing very well now this year as well. I think we're in a few finals underage this year now as well. So look, it is so important that you kind of mind and develop your underage, and it's very easy when you have a bit of success to neglect it. But as I say, like, look, after 2013, we probably learned a harsh lesson. It was the time to really develop our underage, and look, probably didn't do enough for a couple of years. But look, the club seems in great stead now at the moment.
I suppose the first challenge you'll have in the build up to this in your own house, you know, the wife or Rhode woman, will she be on your side or will she be going to green and gold? And, you know, these are all novelty factors you build up. But again, I suppose the occasions to be enjoyed as much as anything. Do you feel, as the older statesman of the team, a lot of pressure? Because when Tullamore are in a final, when they get, you know, the win behind their backs, the kind of town expects them to deliver.
Yeah, I didn't think too many people knew that anyway, but no, look, it adds definitely from my own point of view. Obviously, it adds a bit of interest to it as well. And look, her family are obviously steeped in GA history as well, you know, so there's a bit of banter there as well. Yeah, look, I wouldn't say I feel pressure. No, it's, look, for me, finals are kind of, I won't say they are rare for me, you know, so you kind of have to enjoy them. I've been lucky enough to play in 2 or 3 of them before, and I know what they're like. My intention is to go and enjoy them, and I hope it'll be the same now come next Sunday, that I can go in and enjoy the game. I wouldn't really say there's much pressure on me, you know. I would see that have an awful lot of responsibility coming to the team. As you said before, we're backbone by a lot of youth. So look, you're kind of seeing it, kind of taking on a leadership role as well. So look, pressure, I have my own job, but I try and do that as best I can, and leave by example, I suppose.
I suppose, look, there's one thing I haven't touched on too much in talking about GA, that the whole COVID that we've gone through the last 6 months, and, you know, there's enough, I suppose, negative press about that during the day. From a playing perspective, this will be the first, you know, Senior A final of the year. Does it become a strange setup, you know, going out in O'Connor Park next door, run out onto the field, but only maybe having 100, 200 people at it? Hopefully we stay at the levels we're at for that. Or does it become a weight off the players' shoulders, particularly the youngsters, that they haven't got 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people to be in that sort of environment.
Yeah, look, it's strange. It is, there's no point saying otherwise. I think one way or another, the fact is the final brings its own pressures, even when you're playing, you don't tend to notice the crowd too much. Even last Sunday there, I wouldn't have said I noticed the crowd when I was playing, or the lack of a crowd. But then maybe if there was a big crowd there, it might be a different story that you actually might pay to. It might have been a bit more difficult taking penalties, all right, in front of a big crowd. But look, we just want to win a final, and it is an awful pity that fans can't go to it and can't enjoy it. It was certainly something for me anyway. At the end of the game, like even family members, only one person can go really, unless they get a ticket outside of it. So from that is quite sad, really. But look, it is what it is. It's a final. We're going to try and win the final, be it a crowd or not. Whatever's there is there. But yeah, look, it is. It's unfortunate.
And lastly, like Niall, who you've obviously soldiered with coming in as manager, someone with a very passionate defence of the youngsters coming through. Do you see this as kind of a turning point for Tullamore in general? Because this is the level Tullamore need to be at year on year, because you would have said that maybe the underage was neglected for a time spell, and 7 years between drinks is probably too long a time for Tullamore to be out of a county final day.
Yeah, look, we're a very ambitious club. But look, the reality is we played in one county final, or this is our first county final since 2013. For the size of the club, it's probably just not good enough, So we've been in a situation before where we've had young teams. 2013 was quite a young team. I think, I'd say the average age was under 25 in that final, and you would have said we would have kicked on, and it didn't happen. So we can't take anything for granted. We're here now, but we have to put in an awful lot of work now again over the next couple of years, because we've no given right just to kick on. It takes a lot of effort, and we need to keep loading young players and keep doing the right things at the club level. But there's no guarantee, like I said, that this team will be around next year or the year after. Anything can happen. You can lose a couple of players here and there. So you'd hope that we're turning the corner. And I'd be optimistic, but as I say, a lot of work has to go in.
Rhode, who've got 29 county titles across their history, 9 county finals in a row, have turned to outside for their management this season, with Portlaois's Malachy McNulty coming in and bringing them back into the county final. They qualified for it undefeated. They beat Tullamore in the group stages too. And when I spoke to Malachy, we started by talking about the prospect of coming into a club who've already tasted so much success. Very different to previous conversations we would have had. Would have been probably in Portlaoise as opposed to being here. I remember actually we had a chat on the phone a few years ago when you were going to play Rhode in the Leinster Club Championship. So you've gone from playing against and preparing to take on Rhode to managing them this year. How have you found it?
It's been a challenge. I suppose, when I was asked to take the job, it was probably a job that I looked at twice. There was a few other jobs there, and I just didn't bear a thought to it. But I just said, hang on there a second now. This is a fantastic traditional club, a club that I'm knowledgeable about. I had some information on the players that had been there already, and I was quite excited at the time. This is going back to November, December last year. I was just very excited at the prospect of working with players of such a high calibre.
You're coming into a club which has a not too dissimilar tradition to your own home club. This is 9 county finals in a row that Rhode have been to. Mm-hmm. They've dominated Offaly football over the last 15 years. I would imagine when you come in as a manager, that is a similar challenge, though, is to keep that hunger for success when you come into a group who've already achieved as much as they have.
Yeah, it was similar with Portlaoise, as you say. So it's, I was coming in with this team, and you're in so many county finals. Where do you go from there? And I suppose a new manager, an outside manager, might help to freshen things up a little bit, Will. And I suppose what you look at then is you look at your players, your profiles, and what can they do, where can they improve upon, and are they willing to do that? And it's certainly something I found about this group of players. They just want to soak everything up. They want to improve their game. They're great on the breakdown, particularly in championship season. So they'll have a good, solid, honest look at the previous game, and try and implement what needs to be implemented for the game coming forward.
And you've joined a club who've got just a remarkable set of players too. You look at Alan McNamee, who I think is officially the 4th most successful club in the Offaly Championship if he was to just go by his own medals. Mm-hmm. And then you take players like Niall McNamee, Brian Darby, Niall Darby, leaders and guys who've been part of this success over the last 20 years.
You've mentioned that, Will, leaders. And I'd venture to say that there's leaders all around the park, the inter-county players that are there, that are playing their trade with the county. Different this year in that they were with us and exposed to us a lot more than usual. But just even, at club level for the club players, you've got some fantastic servants there, who just really drive it on. Ex-county players like, the Sullivan brothers. You've got the likes of Kieran Heavey, who's been playing his trade for a long, long time. You've got the Kavanaghs there. They're just two fantastic brothers who, I can't imagine lads are in as good a shape anywhere in the country as them. And then you've got, some of the younger brigade coming through as well. Lads like Keith Murphy, who has done exceptional in the championship this year as part of the panel, and Aaron Keelan, who's a massive prospect. So these young lads are looking at the older lads. They're seeing how things are done. They're taking tips. They're taking advice from them, suggestions, and it bodes well for Rhode in general.
When it comes to this championship, I guess reasonably straightforward in terms of the group championship, at least from an outsider. That's the way people would look at how the games went. Did that pose its own problem going into the Eden-Derry game, given that you'd had 3 games where you weren't massively tested going into it?
I think it comes down to how much you test yourself, So, you can go out in the early stages and you can play Clara and your Captain Kerr and Tullamore even, who we have in the final now. We prepared as best we could for that game. We wanted to go after each game, from the get-go. And, regardless of whether the game is in the melting pot or whether you're pulling away, you want to try and focus on getting a performance. Because essentially when it comes to knockout football, you're looking at teams putting, 3 quarters, the full game of a good performance together and not kind of dipping for long periods of time, because that's where games can be won and lost. So, if you were to ask me, I'd say, we really tried to string a full performance in the group stages. And in fairness, you have to go back to a very important word in this squad, which is resilience, okay? Because sport is such that it doesn't always go to plan. You have your Mike Tyson saying everyone has a plan until you get that punch in the nose, So that resilience really shone through. So if you were asking me, did it pose problems? I don't think so. I really wanted the collective conscience of the team to be one of resilience, where when things don't go wrong, whether it's on a micro level and it's maybe a wide that's hit or a goal that should have been scored, or whether it's on the macro level, like last Saturday, where things just aren't clicking in certain key areas of the pitch, that they stuck to their guns, they stuck to the plan, and they went after it.
And look, it's kind of a microcosm of everything, is the Rory McNamee point, which sends that game to extra time. Works a good position. Okay, he's a little bit off balance when he takes it, but he still had the balls to take the shot when it was needed to make sure that you got an equaliser. And
at that point, you go to 60 minutes and you're there, oh well, you're turning to your selectors on the line. What's the ref going to do? There's a water break to put in. There's a little bit of extra time. Will he play 63? Will you get 64? Might you get an extra minute out of it? But you're looking out in those few minutes towards the end of the game, and you're kind of like, you're kind of saying they're actually looking to make it happen, and regardless of the result in the end, you couldn't fault him for that, because at that stage you have your cornerbacks. Brian Darby is filtering up through the centre of the pitch. He's finding himself on the opposition 45. You've got Niall, his brother, doing the same. You've got Gareth McNamee driving forward. You've got Owen Rigney from centre back driving forward. They're going to look to make it happen. So we were very glad to get the result. Rory really, really pulled one of the finest points you'll see in O'Connor Park, given the context, out of fire. But at the end of the day, they just kept going. And, if I was to look back on that game and it was a defeat, I couldn't fault them for their resilience.
And look, they showed everything about their skill in that first half of extra time too. You got to make use of the wind when you've got it in the circumstances, and they put scores together and they got a goal that proved absolutely crucial. So they were able to kind of refocus themselves after they got the draw, and then to push on at that point too. Yeah,
but I would have mentioned it earlier on as well, Will. The panel played such an important role. I can't honestly say that we put one sub on there that day that didn't play a very, very important role. Like Pádraig, for example, had to go on after 10 minutes due to an injury to Kieran Heavey, and Pádraig just emptied the tank for 40-45 minutes, and he was able to willingly come off and someone else to go on and do the job. Paul McPadden played a huge role in driving it forward. He would have got one of those points at the end. And I kind of maybe get a bit sentimental on this one, but I think when you put someone like Alan McNulty out in O'Connor Park, he nearly just knows every blade of grass. He knows where to be at the right time, and he knows what ball to deliver. And in fairness to him, you have to pinpoint the 2 passes that he played. He delivered to Rory for the equaliser, and he delivered to his brother for the goal, and Niall Dooley dispatched. So, I just look back on the strength of that panel and how they drove on in that way,
I'm sure when you get to a county final, knowing that you can rely on those players and bring them in at vital points, they could be the difference maker in a final.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we're looking at Tullamore at the moment, and something tells me it's not going to be the same Tullamore team that we played back in the group stages. It's going to be a Tullamore team that have gotten a bit of momentum, a little bit of confidence. They played a fine brand of football. They were very, very quick and slick the last day. They were driving forward in waves. I thought they played a really good game in the semi-final. So we're going to prepare for them, and like any other game, we're looking back on maybe some of our deficits from the previous game. Not just that, but we did very well also, and try to put that into practice. We'll have a look at our panel, and myself, Anthony and Joe will do our best to put out the best team for the county final to give ourselves every chance of winning.
And when it comes to your opponents, a lot's been made of the fact that they've reached this final with just one victory, and not too dissimilar to their hurlers 11 years ago, who won a championship after, I think, just one win and one draw on the group stage to qualify. It doesn't matter how you get to a final, ultimately the fact that you get there. And from Tullamore's point of view, they had their safety net entirely taken away at the point that they lost to you in the championship in the second round. They've done a hell of a job to get to a final from that position. No,
there's no doubt about it. And you have to commend Tullamore again. They have shown great structure under their management going forward. 2 defeats in the early stages of the group games. Anyone could have said they were out, given what they were going into in the third game, but they knuckled down. They got the result over Clara, and full credit to them, because I was at the game there on Sunday watching them play, and for Man were county champions, and Tullamore looked every bit able for them. It was a very, very even contest. So I suppose the momentum is with Tullamore. They're probably feeling that as well, but we'll do everything in our power to counter that.
We're a couple of weeks away from the final as we speak tonight here in Rhode. Does it feel any different for you to be preparing for a final with a club that's not your own?
See, I try to break it down, make it very black and white. It's very simplistic for me, so I suppose I can kind of tunnel vision just the games that are gone and the games that are coming, I suppose, is there a lack of sentiment in relation to the fact that it's not my own club? I honestly believe that you can't really manage a club properly unless there's some sort of emotional attachment and trust that's built between management and players. So I wouldn't say it's much different. It's not hugely different. You try connect with the players, you try see what make them tick, and you try and bring them along and get the most out of them. That's what I would have done with my own club, and it's not hugely different. No.
In terms of players, anyone I've spoken to recently, at least for Offaly, this championship is very different, because they would previously have played a couple of rounds before inter-county, played inter-county, came back, finished the groups, and then have a longer kind of run to the final. This year's been shorter, just the nature of COVID-19 and everything else. Has that helped as a manager? Because some of the players have said one thing that's been very helpful for them is playing in 2-week blocks and playing game on game, that they're actually able to find a bit of fitness and form because of that.
Well, there's a couple of aspects to that, okay? Obviously, it's 2 weeks all the way through, so you get to build momentum. That's one way of looking at it, but it doesn't always work that way, as you could see last Saturday with ourselves, because the form didn't stay true. But at the same time, going back to it, as I say, when we came back after COVID, it was a difficult time. There were a lot of injuries. You were trying to get lads up to championship pace, and you were trying to get that balance right. So, that was probably one of the cons of COVID. It was very, very difficult to manage and get everybody fit in 2 match day in one piece. But I'd say one of the big pros of it this year was the fact that, look, I think the inter-county pulled the plug at one stage, and then all of a sudden you have your 6 or 7 players in with you training consistently. So you're not depending on pre-championship that you only have them for a week or a week and a half or 2 weeks, So as a result, it has built up a very cohesive bond amongst the entire panel, So it's not just the boys are back and now who's going to lose their place or what's going to happen. It's it's more level pegging.
And as a club manager, I would imagine a break in the season, or the split season that they're talking about, is probably something you'd welcome then.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that at all, but I suppose this is a good trial run for it, and just see how things work out. That's something that's out of our control. I just a split season might work. Yeah, it might not work, but we'll see how it goes. It's just interesting how much I think passion from the players has gone into their county championships, and not overly thinking about beyond that. And it's great to see around the county, or the country rather, how it's going.
I would imagine as well, they probably made you quite aware of the history of the two clubs here. You're talking about the two have raised the Dowling Cup more than anyone else. Rhode 29, Tullamore now 27. It feels like only yesterday I was here and the two clubs were potentially going for 28 and managers were trying to play that down. But there's no getting away from the fact that you're talking about the two pedigree teams over the last 100 years in Offaly that are going to meet in this final now.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge rivalry. It's going to be a great day. It's almost like the tables turn. In previous years I would have been obviously involved with Portlaoise and you'd be going into a more park, but it's like you're playing in your backyard, and now I'm coming in with Rhode and it's playing a team that are almost playing in their backyard, so there's that kind of element to it, because that stands a lot to that home team, if that makes sense. It's going to be a great game. I hope it's going to be an open game of football. There will be biting it. Now I said that about the last game. I have a cousin from Offaly and he often reminds me that the daggers fly in O'Connor Park, and that it's a different kettle of fish when you're outside group stages and you're in dead out championship football and knockout championship football. So it's it's a game to look forward to.
And I guess a little bit different to last year, where Pascal Keelan and Jack Cooney were preparing for a county final with a lot of injuries and a lot of concerns coming into it. You seem to be a bit better placed maybe than the way the team were last year going into the final, where you're not having to bandage a few players going up by the looks of it.
Well, God will, you've got a good old insight there.
You're going to give me the full injury.
Well, if you're looking at it, Will, we had to use 22 players the last day, and if extra time was to come the next day, I'm pretty sure we'd probably have to use 20, 21, 22 players again. That's the way the game has gone. If you're getting the most out of your players, they're going hard, they're going fast, and they're giving you everything you have. For so long. I know the black card is slightly different, but I really do miss that 6 sub in normal time. But because it's a great cushion to have. But this is a panel game. The lads are still in recovery this week, and that's about right given the exertions of the game on Saturday. So we'll wind them up now to this weekend, and we'll bring them back down, and we'll see how they're all set for the game.
On a final note, before I let you go. Is practicing penalties at the end of training now becoming a more regular event, given Tullamore were telling me last week that they did put a little bit of thought into it, knowing that games were finishing on the day? Have the lads in Rhode been practicing penalties a bit more than usual?
I'm sure there's a few lads that fancy themselves more than others at penalties. You might see a couple of small little penalty shootouts gathering from time to time before training, and maybe at different points during the year. It's something that we will have a look at over the coming weeks. We have looked at, but only very briefly, mind you, over the past couple of months. But it's certainly a change. Someone said it to me the other day, Will, that it's no way to win a county final. I think it was in relation to the Tyrone county final. So nobody should go out in penalties and things like that. And when you think about it, the World Cup is that can be decided on penalties. The biggest competitions in the world are decided on penalties. So maybe it's the way forward.
It's also something that you can train for. I know commentators love to say the lottery of penalties, but ultimately the team who are better prepared and who have the better penalty shooters and the people who show their nerve on the day are probably going to win. I mean, it rewards skill.
It's a fair point. And all you have to do is look at last Sunday. I think was there 10 penalties converted, 5-5.
The first 7 rounds were all converted.
That was unbelievable stuff, and I did see the videos for it, and it was some shootout.
Well, look, Malachy, thanks a million for talking to us, and best of luck getting ready for the final on Sunday week.
Will, thanks very much as always.
Okay, that was Malachy McNulty, already a man who's had so much success as both a player and a manager with Portlaoise, and both played and managed against Rhode, now in charge of the village ahead of this Sunday's county final. I also spoke to 2 of their key players coming into the decider, their vice-captain Gareth McNamee and captain for Rhode this coming Sunday, Niall Darby. Niall, let's start with you. Does the novelty wear off in any way when you've got to 9 finals in a row, and particularly when you look at the success going back to the turn of the century, 2002-2003, it's so familiar for Rhode to be in a final, but particularly having been in 9 successive ones, does it lose any of the lustre getting back into these finals year on year?
No, absolutely not. In fact, it's every one you reach, the satisfaction is nearly compounded with every one of them. They're not easily got to, so to get to 9 in a row is it's testament to the work that's gone on, for the last 20 years in Rhode. But As I said, none of them are ever easily won, and we know we have a huge test ahead of ourselves Sunday week.
Plus, in fairness, every expert out there, probably include myself in this, are thinking Rhode are probably on a downward spiral now. There's only so long that those particularly the veteran players within the club can keep going and keep getting back to county finals. But you continue to confound us with the amount of success that you have. It's remarkable the achievement of such a small area to be able to continue to get to county finals year on year.
Yeah, but I suppose like that every year a couple of young lads are brought on as well, and we've no distractions in Rhode from a point of view of other sports. So people that start to play football from a very early age generally tend to stay with it. And thankfully with the underage system we have here, there's a lot of good footballers produced, and getting them through to senior isn't really an issue. And they've a love for the game straight away, and I want to play for Rhode from an early age, and thankfully they follow through with that. As I said, a couple of young lads come through every year, but you have a mix of youth and experience there as well. Like you saw the job Alan McNulty did the last time when he came on, just absolutely incredible the way the man still holds himself. So between, as I said, that mix of youth and experience, it's a good place to be.
Well, look, Alan McNamee has lifted more Dowling Cups than most clubs in the county have at this point. I think he's in the top 5 if he was just to be a club in and of himself. It is quite remarkable that he comes in, and the impact that he had when he came on in that semi-final against Edenderry. You're looking for a player to maybe force the agenda a bit, play a longer pass. He plays this laser pass into his brother, which leads to the goal. Yeah,
that's. I talked to an Edenderry man in work the week a couple of days ago, which was a few days after the semi-final, and he said, I'm absolutely sick of looking at that ball from Alan McNamee into Niall McNamee and a goal. No, he's as I said, he's a credit to himself the way he's carried himself. And I know the man all my life. He used to be my babysitter, actually, as a matter of fact. Didn't do a great job on that front. But no, he's a man I've looked up to all my life, and will always continue to. I think he's 11 senior championship medals, but to train with him, he's just as hungry as if he'd none, as if he'd never won a thing in his life. Still orchestrates things at training, still the driving force of training, and for him to come on and have the impact he did the last day is brilliant to him.
Just from chatting to Anton the other day, he was kind of admitting, I put the headline in the Midland Tribune to him, which was a get out of jail free card. But he was saying that maybe you learn a bit about yourselves going into a final when you can ruck a situation out like that, where it looked like for large times Edenderry were going to win the game. Even 64 minutes gone, you desperately needed a score, found that score to put into extra time. You learn a bit about the character of a team in those situations.
Yeah, we showed massive resilience and character in that, in fairness. I missed a free to draw it, and I looked up at the clock and it was 64 minutes gone, but I heard the referee say there's 2 minutes left, and I said to myself, just please let us get a chance. And Edenderry won the next kick out, but we got the ball back, and Rory McNamee leveled it with a brilliant score. And then, as you alluded to earlier, the laser pass from Super into Niall, and we got a goal, and we managed to kick on from there, thankfully.
And it seems to have been a real drive once you got to extra time. You knew you had the elements which that wind was swirling in your favour, that you had to make the most of it, otherwise Edenderry were going to have 10 or so minutes with that advantage. You made the most of it. Yeah, and it was important to do that, because we hadn't done that for all of the game. Up to that, with or without the wind, we were erratic with our shooting, didn't take our chances, kicked away an awful lot of ball, so just that one chance that we got on goal, we took it, and that was the kind of catalyst for us to push on from there. When it comes to motivation and trying to get back to a county final, I'm sure it probably started the Monday after the defeat to Ferban last year, because Ferban beat you have to come back. You're now the challengers, a new management comes in with Malachy too. Was there kind of a freshness when you had a new management team coming in and a goal to be chasing as opposed to being the chase this year?
Yeah, there was, and I suppose the outgoing management from last year, they were a special group to be around as well and to be involved with, and we had great days and memories with them. And but a fresh voice came in, and Malachy and the lads so far have done a brilliant job. They've put us in a position to now challenge for a championship again, which is all we wanted after last year having been beaten. And that final last year still is kind of raw enough now, to be honest. But no, we've put that to the back of our minds now and focus on what's going to be a massive challenge Sunday week.
Malachy McNulty coming in, not easy to replace effectively in inter-county management with Westmeath has left you last year. You look at Malachy, who's had so much success as a player and then seamlessly transitioned directly from his playing career to being the manager of Portlaoise and continued on their run of success after that too. You knew what you were getting when he came in. Yeah, and more importantly than that, we knew we were getting a winner. He's a man that he doesn't like to lose. You know, he's quick to tell everyone he won 10 championships as a player, 3 as a manager. So you know, he's been around a lot of success. He's won 2 Leinster Club Championship medals as well as a player. So he's a great pedigree behind him, and thankfully we managed to avail of his services. And as I said, he's done a great job so far. What about Tullamore then? You beat them in the group stages of this championship. They looked like they were down and out at that point. They rescued a result against their rivals Clara, and then they knocked Forban out against the odds in the semi-final. Hell of an achievement for them to get from that position with no safety net whatsoever into a county final. We talk about character of teams. That says a lot about them, doesn't it? Oh, huge, yeah. And if anyone reads anything into the group game that we played them on a Tuesday or a Monday night in Gracefield, it'd be very, very foolish. And you know, the longer Tullamore teams are left in championships, you know, they're notoriously hard to beat in finals. That's why we're going to have to improve an awful lot on our performance from the last day. We know that won't be close to good enough to get over Tullamore. So it's going to be a huge challenge. But as I said, it's great to be in a position to challenge for a championship. And the argument to be as well, Niall, if you're going to be flat in the game, you'd rather be flat in a semi-final than in a final. Yeah, that's true. But I suppose a lot of that flatness was down to Eden Derry as well. They didn't really let us play, and they've a very youthful team there and a good mixture of youth and experience, and they'll be a team to watch for the next number of years. Yeah, we're just having a chat looking back on it from last Saturday, and the feeling was, if you look at the age profile of that Eden Derry team particularly, no great surprise when they had a few outstanding minors over the last few years. They're definitely a coming force within the county again. Oh, definitely, yeah, and like that, you know, Tullamore will be as well. They've had an awful lot of lads involved with minor and under 20 teams down the last number of years, so they're going to be, you know, I think anyone who wants to win championships in the next couple of years is going to have to be going through the likes of Eden Derry and Tullamore. Gareth, I'll ask you, what's the feeling like when you're kind of in this couple of week period getting ready for a county final now, and particularly this year it must probably feel a little bit different, you know, given the season's been compressed in the way it was because of COVID-19. It only feels like a few days ago nearly that the championship got underway, and here we are now at county final time already. Yeah, it's a great feeling to be in, getting ready for another county final, and it was great to come back after the lockdown. You know, as Niall said earlier, it was very frustrating when we went into lockdown, and you take football for granted until it's taken away for you. So we were trying to tip away on our own for so many weeks, and when we came out of lockdown then it was all systems go, and sure, everyone was delighted to get back up to the field, and just grateful to be back playing football, you know, and gearing up for a county final. And I'd say, look, for a lot of people there was that genuine concern that maybe the club season wouldn't even happen, and then when Offaly went into the localised lockdown for a while, we really wondered if it was going to get finished in time. It's probably a relief just to be able to get these games every couple of weeks now. Yeah, it is, you know, you were just gaining momentum, and then we're back in lockdown again, and it was kind of a feeling of unfairness to the 3 counties, and we're kind of wondering when and what if it doesn't get finished. But thankfully it was back up, and we played Tullamore on that Monday after the lockdown, and it's great to be back playing, and it was ran off smoothly since. So it's games coming thick and fast, and it's great to get back playing. I was chatting to Malachy earlier. He was saying it's not too dissimilar to the Laois Championship, given that they have a knockout system where generally it's played in late August all the way through to the end of September, and that's the championship. It's a bit different for Offaly this year though. Normally you would have had 1 or 2 run-outs back in April or May, and then inter-county breaks off, and then you're back again, and it's a couple of seasons almost rolled into one. Has it been enjoyable as a player to be able to at least be able to break this into a 6-7 week period and have your championship played in that? Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this year. You know, you had the likes of Niall and all the inter-county boys with you the whole year basically, and you weren't stopping and starting and playing a game in April and then have a completely different team the next round in July when the championship gets rolled out. But it was great to get that momentum and a bit of continuity as well within the team, and yeah, it was enjoyable, this format. Now I'd be a fan of that going forward, you know, so getting the championship done in every 2 weeks, prefer that now this year. Yeah. We've talked a lot, obviously, about the semi-final against Eton-Derry, but understandably there's going to be talk about it because it was so dramatic. That kind of little bit of bite and steel that's needed to get through a semi-final, is that something that could potentially be very useful in a final, that you can draw upon what you had to do, particularly in the late stages of that semi-final last weekend?
Yeah, I think we found out a lot about ourselves last Saturday. It was a 64th minute, as Niall said, that, and we're still in the game, and we're kind of thinking, just let us get that ball, and we get one more chance at it. And as you said, Super comes up again and kicks that ball in from whatever it was, the laser, as they were calling it earlier. But it's just, that'll stand to us, of course. And we know what happened in the other semi-final, but it goes to show how strong the Offaly Championship is. 4 teams, nothing between them, and that's a very, very strong Eton-Derry team, likewise with Tullamore. So we're grateful just to be gearing up for a final Sunday week and not to be going through a long winter again,
I'll be careful how I phrase this so I don't get in trouble with him, but given his advancing years, does Alan still take as full a part in all the training, everything that happens, or is he indulged a little bit, given that it would be understandable if he was able to take it a bit easier?
He wouldn't be going in half-hearted up at training anyways, you'd be kind of looking to dodge him up there, he'd be going like a train, so as Jody Gunnan would say, but no, he's still, I don't know how the man does it with all the county medals he has. He still goes as if he has none, he's 100% every night of training. There's no wrapping him up in cotton wool, and I'd say if you tried to wrap him up in cotton wool, you'd get an elbow or something like that, and that's not something I'd like to get off the man.
That's some of the romance, isn't it, about club football, though? You get guys who are at the very outset of their adult career will come in and take a place in the panel, and people who've given over a decade of experience and service to their club will still be around trying to win more county medals.
Yeah, it's a testament to the club, really. There's a great atmosphere around, and you breed success, and the youth come in and they get a kick off that, and they want what the Supers and the Nilers and the lad beside me, they want what they have, and that's what drives everyone on, and everyone's as hungry as ever. It's like we're going for our first championship over and over, because when you go back to training that year, you're not really the champion, you're going for that title again. And I know after last year with Ferban, it was a long winter, and I couldn't wait to get back training. But I know it's in the freezing cold, and as it was this year, the frosty pitches, but I just couldn't wait to get back for 2020.
Yeah, I think it's on those moments the championships are built. Niall, can I just ask you about Offaly coming back? Obviously the lads are back training. I think their first proper session with John Mahon was the week just gone. You have to push it back by a couple of weeks before you go back in. But how are you feeling about this kind of very short preparation window that Offaly are going to have? Because the middle of next month and those last 2 league games are going to come around very quickly.
They will, yeah. But I suppose it's a nice complaint to have, that you've games to look forward to as opposed to having absolutely nothing. It was looking that way a couple of months ago that absolutely nothing would get played, but Offaly went back last night. I can picture John on the way down from Castlebar with a big grin on his face going down to Kilcormac, getting ready to train, and probably
he went up and down 3 times last weekend, so he's very quick to stress that too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the wetter and the dirtier the night, I'd say that John would enjoy it more. So no, it's great. It's I think from the county finals the 4th of October, and Offaly play Tipperary in the next league game on the 18th. So exactly 2 weeks. That'll be a very quick turnaround. But as I said, it's nice to have that to look forward to, and it's just more or less games from here on into the end of the year. As soon as we play Tipperary, it's the following week is against Derry, and the following week's the first round of the championship, and anything after that that happens. So I suppose it's nice to just have games to look forward to as well.
Yeah. Does it feel like a slightly different year? I mean, naturally it has to, given the way 2020 has gone, but the idea that you're going out there and effectively it's do or die every single game you play between now and the end. Like, realistically, you need a result against Tipperary or Derry to ensure that you're in Division 3 for next year, and then win or lose the Carroll game, that's going to define how long you play in the championship. That's it, yeah. We definitely need a result from one of those games. Be great to get 2 of them if possible. The Tip game will be especially tough, seeing as the likes of Michael Quinlivan that came back and a few others that came back. But I suppose that's further to think for down the line. It'll be strange to play such games of such importance in October and hopefully going into November then. Well, it was also camogie final weekend in Offaly, and the title, St Rynagh, now 4 seasons in a row, Joe, that they've won the championship. And I remember a time when Rynagh couldn't get a breakthrough, and they were watching your club Drumcullen winning titles. They were watching Shinrone's dominant period in particular. They had a year where they looked like they were about to get there, and Burr bang in a goal in the semi-final in the 67th minute, 7 minutes into injury time, broke their hearts, and Burr go on to win their maiden title. Rynagh then had to regroup and become champions 4 years ago. And they've had just this remarkable journey. You were doing their All-Ireland final last year where, God, for large stages of that game, it looked like they were going to beat Galtire and be crowned All-Ireland champions. But they've run off a couple of Leinster intermediate crowns in recent seasons, now 4 Offaly titles in a row. Rynagh are building a bit of a dynasty here.
Oh, they are an incredible group of ladies, in fairness. There's a great spirit down there. Anytime we've gone down for preview nights, be it up before the All-Ireland, be it just media nights and stuff, they're always very open and honest. They're a fun group of girls. There's a lot of good people down there in St Rynagh's Camogie Club. And look, I was probably, to an extent, reared on Camogie success. As you said, it was Drumcullen, Shinrone, Drumcullen. Drumcullen do a lot of titles in a row. Then Shinrone broke that stranglehold. They looked like they were going to dominate. And then, you had the title from Burr to come in, but St Rynagh have been the coming force. They experienced a lot of hurt before they got over that hurdle. Beaten maybe controversially in a semi-final. They had a lot of
I can say as a Burr person, it was massively controversial.
Yeah.
They felt that game was over multiple times in injury time, and you just wondered if there was going to be one more chance. And then it's a swing and a hit, a goal out of nowhere, and they're beaten in a semi-final. I think they probably would have went on and beat Shinrone in that final. But the hurt of it ended up becoming a big motivating factor for the run they're currently on.
It has, and the huge servants, like from the likes of Elaine Sullivan, was probably one of their most experienced, and maybe doesn't get the credit that Linda gets from being, a county stalwart and, playing with ladies football as well. But Elaine Sullivan has been a real linchpin of that. She was captain last year, Emma Corcoran was captain last year, but the likes of those girls have huge experience. You have the likes of the Kate Kenny, Siobhan Flannery's, Linda, with so much county experience, Mairead Daly now back into it, and like even Grainne Dolan, the captain, like last year, she really took the game by the neck up in Croke Park. Got one of the best scores I've seen, not just camogie, but up in Croke Park. She fetched the puck out, launched over, huge effort, and a hugely popular character down in St Rynagh. They were heartbroken. I was heartbroken for them doing commentary, and when you're commentating, it's hard not to, you're trying to stay neutral, but my heart went out to Rynagh that day because a goal, like literally the last puck of the game. But I did say that day they will be back. They're hardest battles are always in Offaly, and they have Shinrone breathing down their neck, they have Burr, but the pace they have in attack, the togetherness, and when you get a bit of motivation, a bit of success, and then you start to get, a run at these games, St Rynagh are always going to be feared now in Leinster, and I think, and look, you're not going to put the ass before the cart and go with wild predictions, but I think sooner rather than later Rynagh will get an All-Ireland success. If it happens this year, and we don't know what's going to happen with the COVID in terms of how the Leinster and All-Ireland champions are going to play out the next couple of years, but I think if Rynagh can get back, navigate their way through a Leinster campaign, I think it's only a matter of time, because Galtire's story could become St Rynagh. They, of course, were beaten the year before. They beat Rynagh in a snatch and grab, but I just think it's a fantastic achievement. As I said, the camogie in Offaly is extremely competitive now. We went through that period of dominance, as we said, with Drumcullen and Shinrone winning the odd title. It's going to be hard to see beyond Rynagh for a couple of years, because all of a sudden now success breeds success, and you start to see underage teams in county finals, and St Rynagh aren't going anywhere for a while.
No, they most definitely aren't. Let's hear from the St Rynagh camp then. A little bit earlier on today, I spoke to their captain, Grainne Dolan, about their success now, 4 titles in a row. Delighted to say we are now joined by the St Rynagh camogie captain, Grainne Dolan. It's after St Rynagh secured their 4th Offaly title in a row. They beat Shinrone at the weekend by 3 goals and 16 points to 4 goals and 9. And Grainne, when people hear that final scoreline, they're probably thinking, okay, that got down to 3 points very late. But realistically, Shinrone's comeback was late on when they gave you a good scare with some goals late in the game.
Yeah, the scoreline doesn't reflect maybe how well we were doing. Like, we had a 14-point lead there at one stage, and then we knew Shinrone were going to come back at some stage, like they always do, and they just got 3 goals so quick. Like, they just kept pushing at us. So I think, and it was later on, like maybe, I don't know if they were thinking they should have done it sooner, but I think we always kind of knew Shinrone were going to come back at some stage. We just didn't realise they'd come back with such force and they got 3 goals just so quickly. But we definitely, all the way up throughout the rest of the match, like we were definitely on top of them. Like, we had such a lead, and they just did really well to diminish the lead to 3 points.
It's just a remarkable run that you're on now at this point, because you wait so long to get the breakthrough success with this team, and now to have run off 4 in a row, to have won a couple of Leinster titles in there. Okay, I guess the All-Ireland last year is the one disappointment of this run, but it's a remarkable little period of success that you've put together now in pretty short succession with the club.
Yeah, it's incredible to be part of. Like, to actually get to Croke Park last year, like that's stuff of dreams. Like, it's what everyone hopes to achieve, like to get there. I know, as you said, it was disappointing we didn't win, but still to get there was amazing. Like, we have, when we won our first county title 3 years ago, we had Albert and Roy with us, and they put in serious work. They're brilliant. You know, they really got us to a good spot. And then Mark and Molly coming in last year, like they've just taken it to a whole new level. Like, they're so professional, and it's obviously showing in the accomplishments we've achieved so far.
Mark was saying on the radio at the weekend too that the hurt of last year and what happened against Galtier was a massive motivator when it came to getting back and getting training, because it's not easy for any team to have to go all the way around the clock and go into the spring of the next year with their season, get to an All-Ireland final, not taste the success, and then have to turn around. And in this COVID year, having to kind of condense the championship into a short period of time too. But there's probably no better motivator than to try and get back to Croke Park again, having had a taste of it last year.
Oh, definitely. Like, I think it was so heartbreaking when we did lose, and like, I suppose it took us a while to kind of get back on our feet, but then we realised, look, we can get there again. You know, we just need to pick ourselves up and get straight back into it, and that's what we did. And it was when COVID hit, we were like, kind of put a bit of a dampener on it. Like, you know, we had such a good run going with trainings and stuff. So we had to start doing our own individual trainings. But as soon as we got back to the group sessions, like, it was intense from the start. Like, there was no stopping us.
The only benefit, I guess, with the break with COVID, it meant some of the players who were carrying injuries and dings and bangs and everything else were able to come back. And, you know, Mairead Daly, who we spoke to on the show last week, scores a goal and a point in that final. Kate Kenny maybe doesn't have as much of a stretch on her resources herself, and Roisin, with the way the football and camogie are going to be broken up for provincial this year. Kate again scored 1-4 in the final. At least the only benefit, I guess, of things being driven a little bit later, one of them is that you get Mairead Daly recovered and back able to play for you this late summer and into the autumn. Yeah,
it's great to have Mairead back. Like, she's such an influential player. Like as you said, she got a goal and a point in the final. She worked so hard, so we're delighted to have her back. And I suppose the fact we had lost Helen Dolan in midfield, like, you know, that she was a big loss to us. So it was great to have Mairead there to kind of make up for that loss in a sense. And like, as you said, we've Kate and Roisin, you know, they're not as stretched with the football, even though they're still playing great with their football, but we have them a bit more for the camogie. They can focus on both individually a bit better. So it makes such a difference when you have everyone able to play and everyone in good condition.
Well, Naomh Ciaráin have their own adventure to go into Leinster, which starts this weekend. St Rynagh, having won the intermediate ladies football in Offaly, have got a Leinster campaign to play too. It's probably helpful, I would imagine, just as a club, that you can kind of park the camogie to a certain extent and worry about that in the new year now, as opposed to some of the kind of challenges we were talking about last year with 2 games taking place on the one weekend. You'll be able to give the camogie a right good focus and a proper run when it comes around.
Yeah, exactly. We can, you know, it's great for the football as well. Like, I play both, and we hadn't won with the football in a long time. I know Naomh Ciaráin they're on a great winning streak at the minute, but we hadn't really, you know, our football had gone down a lot. So it's great for us to even be back competing at Leinster again, like we used to a few years ago. And the fact that we can focus on it now, we're not, we're not going to be playing a camogie match on the Sunday afterwards. It is great, like, and it makes such a difference to even just the players with injuries and stuff. We're not putting as much pressure on ourselves physically either. So it's nice that we have that break, that we can, you know, focus on the 2 sports separately.
And, you know, you take any kind of crumb of positivity that you can in 2020. It must be lovely to have 2 medals in such quick succession, to have won the ladies' football the week before and then to retain your camogie crown 6 days later.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like it just brought a bit of a lift back to, the club. Everyone was just so delighted for us. They're so proud of us. And I think everyone just needed like a bit of positivity. Like, it was just a lovely lift to give everyone. Yeah, it was great. Like, it was a great lift to the club, to everyone involved, like everyone that would have attended our matches and everything. It just a nice bit of news, I suppose, amongst all the bad news that's going on at the minute. So it was great feeling. I think everyone was so proud of us, and we're so proud of ourselves. So it was really nice.
I was chatting to Anne-Marie Guinan last week for the preview of the final, and she was on commentary in Rath for your camogie final last week. And one of the things we noticed is that it's amazing the profile that can be added. Again, your ladies' football final was on YouTube the week before. The camogie was on Facebook on the week just gone by. COVID's been a terrible thing, but one of the positives that's really come through is that streaming has been rolled out and enhanced. Once upon a time, to see the camogie final, you would have had to be one of the people who were in Rath on the day. But I was able to just flick on Facebook last Saturday and watch the final on my phone. It's actually opened up and probably given a lot more publicity to camogie and ladies football than would have been previously possible.
It has, definitely. It's great, like, that people can, they don't have to leave their house to see it. But as well, for people that are abroad, I know some of the girls have sisters or brothers that are in different countries, all the way over in Australia, and they're able to see the matches now. They're not just waiting for updates on their phone. They're actually watching it there and then live, which is great. So it has, and as you said, it's brought so much good publicity to football and camogie, because people can see it. Like, people that would never maybe have watched. I know I'm watching lads football matches and hurling matches that I haven't watched before, just because I can, like, stuff on Facebook and stuff. So I know people are the same, and they're seeing how good the games are. So it's great.
Well, fingers crossed for you. You'll get a ticket in the magic ballot for the hurling final in a couple of weeks' time, and you'll be able to go and watch Rhynagh and KK in person. If not, you'll be stuck like the rest of us on the computer or the phone watching it. Grainne, just on the final note, when it comes to trying to get the Leinster crown again, I guess having tasted success with a couple of them in recent seasons, I would imagine that when the new year comes around, you'll be trying everything to try and retain that crown.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the last 2 years we've had a good success with the Leinster campaign. I suppose we'll just do what we did last year and the year before, train hard, make sure we have our game plan right going into the matches, and just keep it going, like everyone just drive on, and hopefully we can retain our title for a third year in a row, please God.
Does it become any easier or harder when that happens? Because, the first year everything was so new and you just went out and gave it a crack and won yourself a Leinster title. Last year, you're that bit more familiar when you're defending a crown. Does it get any easier when you've now had a few campaigns behind you, like in terms of just knowing what to expect when you go out with the county?
Yeah, I suppose it makes it a bit easier when, like, we know what kind of like standard we're up against. Like, we know we're not going to get anything too easy in that. A lot of matches, we're not just going to win them easy. We're going to have to fight hard for them. But at the same time, you can't expect too much either. Like, you have to just go take it as every other match. You give it everything, just play to our like strong points as best we can. But definitely the experience of playing in the Leinster last 2 years would make it that bit easier. But it's still going to be like, we can't take anything for granted.
Well, that's all to worry about in 2021. Don't have to worry about it for the rest of 2020. Grainne, thanks a million for taking the call to chat with us here on the Brave and Faithful podcast. And best of luck with St Rynagh in the Leinster Club Junior Championship as well.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
So that was Grainne Dolan, the St Rynagh captain, in conversation with me earlier after their success. And I do wonder maybe the fact that they can wait till the new year, Joe, to play their Leinster campaign. St Rynagh are out in the ladies football in the coming weeks in the club championship. Their Naomh Kieran stars in Roisin Egan and in Kate Kenny can now concentrate on ladies football for this year. No doubling up in terms of 2 games on the one weekend, and Rynagh should have a clean run when that camogie comes around. It was a busy weekend outside of Gaelic games. Understandably, this week's pod is fairly GA focused given its county final season. But unfortunately, we talked about Shane Lowry. It was always going to be difficult to find for him at the Irish Open, because I was covering the press conference for Off the Ball on Wednesday, and Shane mentioned that he got back home from America on Monday. Understandably, went straight from the airport to see his wife and to see his daughter Iris. Had a couple of days with the family before he travelled up to Galgorm Castle. So not ideal. You're dealing with the jet lag of the change of time zone. You've just seen your family for less than 48 hours before you're back on the road to make no stops between there and Ballymena to go to the golf course. Didn't get a huge amount of practice time before Galgorm. It wasn't the course he would have been planning for the Irish Open because it would have been Mount Juliet. And he just never really got going over the 2 days. Left himself with a bit of work to do after day one, but then missed the cut.
Yeah, but look, I suppose when you really boil it down, Shane Lowry's human as well. We spoke, sometimes both the media and the general public can be unfair on, international stars on this stage, they're well paid for it. Well, you have to make your own career. Like, it's not like in the Premier League where you're given the wages every week. Shane Lowry has to go out and win those tournaments or finish high up to make his living, and we're all delighted he's been so successful. But he has to get back, see his family. He's had a long, extended period of play there. He's gone through rigorous COVID testing in terms of over in the States. And of course, since the Open win, his schedule and his workload and maybe his media appearances and everything have doubled. And while it's been a hugely successful year for him and something that he'll always look back on as, his greatest ever year maybe, it becomes very, very hard to keep that energy up. You welcome his break and you wish him a full recovery now and just get 5-6 weeks of chilling out, relaxing with the family, seeing a couple of his mates, and he's had a long season. I think he was probably running on empty, being honest, coming over. Long travel, long interrupted season without getting home and getting back to play in Europe a bit more, and the distractions with COVID. I think now he'll come back a refreshed player. He'll probably down tools for, look, Shane Lowry.
He's taken 5 weeks off.
Yeah, but look, Shane Lowry might take 5 weeks off in terms of professional play, but I guarantee you'll see on Instagram the coming days Shane Lowry being a golf course in Ireland because he's obsessed with the game and actually playing. So he'll probably meet some of his mates, some of maybe his fellow caddies and stuff that he pals around with. We often see Stephen Grant himself, playing in a couple of practice games against some other pros, and I'd say that will continue for Shane. But I just think being at home, getting refreshed, seeing his own people, and of course number one, his family. I hope he enjoys his time. He'll have a bit more time to work with his irons, and of course the new golf club's in his bag. But he said he was comfortable with his game. But look, sometimes you can just go out in tournaments, you don't get the breaks, you start that bit worse for wear, and there's a lot of pressure on Shane when he comes to the Irish Open because it's a tournament he so loves. And I would have spoken to people that are big golf followers in the likes of Burr and in the likes of Tullamore, and they would have said that there's so much love for Shane Lowry. McIlroy doesn't always come back and play. Graeme McDowell didn't come back and play in Northern Ireland. Shane Lowry says he can see himself here for the next 30 years. So I think once he gets his break, Shane will look to the season ahead.
The other thing as well, Shane Lowry is a winner. This is sometimes forgotten when people remember, the nice guy, and they remember being so happy for him with the celebrations after the Open last year. Shane Lowry hates losing, and understandably he can get very frustrated at himself. And I think one of the things that Shane does, he cares a remarkable amount about the Irish Open. You mentioned, and he said it during the week too, he could never imagine a scenario, unless he was injured or there was some reason he couldn't play, that he wouldn't want to play the Irish Open, the tournament where he had his breakthrough success. And I remember chatting to him in Ballyliffin 2 seasons ago when, unfortunately, his third day didn't go the way he wanted. He wanted to get back into contention, didn't play well in Donegal, and he cut a massively frustrated figure and was very hard on himself. This is the thing about Shane. He is a fantastic player, and sometimes it's that kind of human side that people miss out on, that golf is the most frustrating game possible if it's not going your way. And this is a time when he's, I think with the exception of the driver, pretty much the rest of his bag has changed over the last month.
Yeah, and look, Will, if me and you go in and play 9 holes or 18 holes, and I like to play a bit of golf, you think you have it mastered and say, Lord, this is getting easy. Next thing, the next 4 holes, 9, 7, 8, want to throw the clubs out the window going home. It's a hugely frustrating game, but I wonder does Shane, and he probably, of course, does realise it, but what he's given us supporters, because look, if someone in Offaly took up a game of marbles and won the World Championships, we'd all be marble supporters. But I often joke with my friend, Shane Lowry probably gave us one of the greatest nights ever in Carroll last year. I was lucky enough to be at the All-Ireland final in 98, but at 10 years of age, you don't get the adult side of it, going out socialising and stuff. I went over that day early to meet Brian Gavin and bring over tower lights from the job I was in. Came back that evening, we sat out on the green, we sang, we laughed, we drank, we forgot to go home. It was an All-Ireland winning night. And when you see people from Coolderry and Burr crying in Clara and outside Baggots with the joy that the night, it was a summer's even, the music was hopping out of it, he's responsible for lifting the emotions of a whole summer. I look back on, I have it saved, and my father watches it a good bit as well, and that documentary on the Open, the emotion even in Brendan when he talked about the US Open. Like, Shane Lowry is a local but a national hero, so I think everyone keeps an eye and hope he does well, because he's a gentleman. I interviewed him a couple of times over in GA Centre. He always comes back, county final or Offaly football games when maybe Club Faithful have done something. When he's available, he comes to these. He gives up his time. He comes, to O'Connor Park. I seen him in Burr last year, an intermediate match for Clara. Got in, got his chat there in Brian Whelan, signed a few photos. Just a gentleman, you'd wish him well. The only thing he ever had up on Shane Lowry, have the report at home, an under 14C final 2000, we put 4 goals by him and Drumcullen lifted the C title with Shane in goals.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Michael Verney and I were both part of a football team that beat Clara in the community games. I think Michael Verney still has the cutting. Very lucky that he kept it. I don't think either of us realised who we had beaten at the time. But I think Shane Lowry was corner forward on the Clara team. And the report had made the point that Shane had kicked his frees quite well.
Actually, Brian Gavin often spoke it. Shane, quite an accomplished dead ball kicker at underage. He was, one of those players that in corner forward you could see he had that skill set, and you just look, everyone just hopes Shane gets back and we have plenty more days out, on majors and stuff like that, because he's one of the most loved sports stars we have.
Yeah, Masters is next for him. A couple of other mentions to give. 2 young Burr players who were playing this weekend in the rugby. Peter Dooley, good to see him back playing for Leinster A. They were beaten by Ulster, but he got a try, so good to see him coming into a bit of form before the Pro 14 season gets back underway. I would imagine Leinster will probably recycle their squad a little bit, given all they've done in the last 2 months, and hopefully Peter gets some more starts in the front row for them. Jack Regan, who would have come through at the same time, also from Burr, bizarrely enough is now in New Zealand after being in the Leinster Academy, Ulster's Academy. Now he's at Otago in New Zealand, and they won the Shield in the Mitre 10 at the weekend, and he seems to be becoming a really key player for them.
I'd probably rather talk about Jack first, because obviously we know the levels Peter at, and we'll touch on it in a minute, but very interesting podcast I happened to listen to one time going home at work was Anthony Daly's one with the Irish Examiner. He had on a brilliant, honestly raw interview with his father Dahi, and Dahi has often appeared on different platforms and spoke about the nostalgia years and the games that are going on, but this was really honest. It was kind of a side of Dahi Regan I hadn't seen, and I texted Dahi after it, but in that podcast he spoke about Jack and the support that he's given and the support Jack's mother and his family have given him. This was a crossroads for a career. Wasn't getting maybe the opportunity in Ulster. Does he walk away from his dream, go get another job, give up on the rugby career, or does he decide, I'm going to go to New Zealand, redevelop myself as a player, I'm still a young man, I still have a lot to offer, I'll build myself up and go. And the way Dottie spoke about it, and Dottie was quite honest with him. He said, Jack, is this going to happen? I said, we'll support you. We've supported you financially, we've supported you mentally, everything. They decided he's going to go. Dottie spoke with pride of him. See Dottie putting up a few bits about him on social media. And for a youngster like that to have, the balls to go and do that, to readapt and say, I'm not done with this career yet. I'm still a young guy, massively driven. I remember Jack as a 16, 17-year-old. Now, I won't say we're both in the gym doing the same work, but I could be in a swimming pool. I like to go into the pool. You'd look up at Jack and he was constantly there doing his programme. I suppose he looked up to Peter Dooley as a neighbour, only a couple of years in the difference. I think what Jack is doing, I hope it works out for him, that he gets his experience, grows as a man, grows as a player, comes back to Ireland, because yourself, a lot of the rugby careers, like Peter Dooley, you could be 27, 8, 29, again, you really get your chance. And I think the experience and the life experience that's coming to Jack Regan now, that'll pay off. And look, Peter Dooley will touch on now, two hugely proud Burr people, and you can speak about Peter Dooley and what he's after doing, but I think in their own ways their careers might just entangle again sometime.
Yeah, well, hopefully. It's a very unusual competition that Jack Regan has won too. So his team beat Taranaki. It's for the Ranfurly Shield, and the thing about it is it's kind of like a winner stays on style scenario. So you play these challenge games against your rivals, and what happens is you have to win it from the team who are currently holding the shield. So you effectively go to their ground, steal the shield away from them, and then you defend it against your rivals the next time round.
It's basically the Mario Kart of New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, indeed. And look, Mitre 10 is good standards. This is one of the things about Jack. He's getting rugby consistently. Some people probably saw the picture of him after Otago had won a scrum at the weekend, and he just emerges out of it almost like a superhero. But again, 2 lads who've had a very kind of unconventional route into rugby. 2 lads coming from a town where rugby is not the kind of number one sport, and here they are now both making professional careers for themselves.
Yeah, and particularly Peter's case is probably interesting, because Obviously, if Peter Dooley decided to put himself on the market and say, I'll go to a Connacht or an Ulster or even overseas, he'd be snapped up. But there's a serious reluctance from Leinster to say, Peter, I think your best rugby lies elsewhere. There's a massive belief. You have to remember, and I often say it to people that don't really understand fully what way the rugby system works. Keane is, or I talk about Keane Healy is in
Keane
mind.
Healy's in the way.
In the way. And you were talking about world class hookers in front of Peter Dooley. They're Irish, they're Lions, and he's had to wait there against a world class, scrum. And there comes a time where Peter Dooley now has served his apprenticeship time and time again. He's captained the Leinster A's at different stage. He's ran in tries. He's had good campaigns at times in the Pro 12. I think the next 18 months are probably huge for Peter Dooley because he has a great career up there, but players aren't maybe comfortable to sit in their career. They want to be in that limelight. And there will be a new wave of Leinster talent coming because we've seen Rob Kearney's going to be leaving, Keane Healy's not going to be there forever, the likes of Sean Cronin, these guys. There's a certain lifespan in that front row. And I think Peter Dooley, his best years are still ahead of him because, as we said, for a prop, when you come to 27, 28, 29, that's when we've seen them at their best.
Yeah, doesn't help that Andrew Porter can play at 3 and at 1, which is always unhelpful when you're in that kind of depth chart to try and catch up with them. But again, sometimes players have to move around. Tom Daly, one of his best mates, went to Connacht last season and has flourished by getting a bit of extra rugby. Get the feeling though Leinster probably want to keep Peter around as a bit of cover for the front row. Elsewhere in the weekend just gone by, I know we're kind of going back to Gaelic games here slightly, but two big announcements that were made. Rapid testing for COVID-19 is a big change in position by the GAA. I get the feeling they're determined now, despite all the talk of levels and level 3 and what could happen in 4 and 5, that these championships are going to be completed and played this year. That's not without its controversy in Offaly in the weekend just gone by, though, because a lot of Edenderry people were unhappy that their parish team were going to be eliminated from the under-20 football championship. Then all underage fixtures were pulled because of the increase in cases. We see what's happened in Longford. Their 2 semi-finals were cancelled on the weekend just gone by. The Ulster Club Ladies Football Championship was pulled. It's just that reminder that COVID-19 is still there in the background and it could still play havoc with sport despite the calendar that came out on Friday for the inter-county season. Yeah, look, I suppose when you're involved in a county board, you're up there for criticism, but I think there was an initial, I said something big is after happening because I came off my lunch break in Midlands 103 and my phone was kind of flooded with notifications like yours, and there were irate Edenderry supporters. But you kind of just have to take a step back and be calm and say, right, what is the situation here? Offaly GA had to rethink on their feet because it was probably maybe a bit quick to just not let Edenderry fulfil their fixture. They then went and suspended all fixtures until today, and there's a review meeting tonight, I think, here in the grounds at some stage. But I think it was good maturity and good leadership because I don't think at any stage Offaly want for any team to have to withdraw from the championship due to COVID. We've been very strong as a county on this. Our clubs have been exceptionally strong on it as well. I've been around the grounds. I've been one of the fortunate few, like yourself and a few more journalists to get in and have access to these matches, and we're grateful for that. But when I go to the grounds, it's very well marshalled. I was here yesterday. There was a good atmosphere for 200 people at it. A lot of people texting, Joe, can you get me in? Joe, can you do this? You can't do it. And from my own club to Tullamore, a lot of grounds that have been in, it's been well handled. It's been unfortunate, and it was an unfortunate scenario for Edenderry to find themselves in, but we do have to respect COVID, we do have to respect the rules, and we'd hope the under-20 that the hurling is resuming tomorrow night, the football will follow suit, and all our championships get played in a safe environment. On a very final note, when it comes to the rugby, Offaly is rugby country for women's rugby currently, because we now have 4 players from Offaly who have been called into the Ireland Six Nations squad for the end of the Women's Championship. We're definitely going to talk to them over the next few weeks because they're in the middle of camp. They had their second camp last weekend. Good news that Claire Malloy, their former captain, is back in and training with the team. But from an Offaly perspective, you've got Nicola Friday in there, Ailsa Hughes, 2 former Tullamore players now at this point, another former Tullamore player in Shannon Toohey, who also formerly was the Offaly junior camogie goalkeeper. Ailsa Hughes would have played camogie for the county. Nicola Friday played a lot of hockey, so we're talking about transferable skills. And also Doon's Michelle Claffey, who will be our backs representative along with Shannon Toohey in that Ireland squad. All 4 picked, and we wish them well, and hopefully they can stay fit between those games against Italy and France. It's a huge period coming up for Adam Grigg's side because they've got the World Cup qualifiers coming up in December too. So hopefully our quartet of players who've made that squad can go well. That pretty much brings us to a conclusion on week 2 of the podcast, Joe. I would imagine next week we're back here, start the hurling preview. We got a bit of a feel with Brian Carroll there, saying pressure on St Rynagh. They have to beat KK or Coolderry. How well a Coolderry man would say that. in order
Particularly a man that has under 12 medals with St Rynagh. Of course, we'll have to give him back because the Rynagh, I'll give him that one. But look, it's been a huge, as you said, GA show this week. We're coming into the closing stages of both championships, and we'll have a couple of surprises for you in the coming weeks. We have some live stories, we have some novelty guests, I suppose, lined up and stuff. We will be covering all sports, and again, we'd ask you for your feedback. We'd ask you to like, share, and join and interact with the podcast, because look, this is the reason we started this. We love conversing about sport. We love our county. And, we encourage people to get involved in whatever way you can with us.
Easy there, John Milan. Zoe Ryan was on video for this week's episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. He has been Joe Troy. I've been Will O'Callaghan. If you're looking for us currently, maybe you're watching a video clip of us somewhere on social media, we are available at this point on Spotify, also on iTunes and Google Podcasts, if you want some oral pleasure over the next while. And if you want to watch us, you can do so on YouTube. We are Faithful Pod on Twitter, and we're Brave and Faithful on Facebook. If you can give us a like, possibly a review, it will help the show to grow a massive amount. We'll be back next week. We'll find out if Rhode or Tullamore are the county football champions for this unusual season of 2020, and we'll have a preview of St Rynagh against KK next week. Thank you for watching or listening. We'll speak to you soon.
Talk to you then.
You've been listening to the Brave and Faithful podcast. Will and Joe will be back with a fresh pod next Tuesday. To continue the conversation, we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.